We are going to do just that right now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Actual Tech Media MegaCast. Today's topic is In Cloud We Trust, ensuring trust and security in enterprise IT and the cloud. Sound like it's an important topic? Well, I agree with you. I want to start by saying a big thank you for joining us. We've got you coming from all over the place today. Good to see you, Mark and Adam and Ezra and Ryan and Dusty, Murray, Holden, and from all over the globe. So delighted to have you with us today, as always. And on the MegaCast today, we've got some of the most innovative leading companies in the industry, and they include TierPoint and Axis and KnowBe4, HPE, Veeam, Rubrik, and Zerto. Quite the lineup. Very excited to hear what they have to say and the knowledge they are going to impart to us. Now, we are gearing up for a long and awesome day, so get comfortable, have a coffee or tea at hand, and get ready to be informed and entertained. I am Keith Ward. Other moderators on our team include Jess Steinbach, who you already met, Scott Becker, and the new guy, Mackenzie Putici. So, as I mentioned about the great lineup of vendors, we also have a great lineup of prizes. Look at this. We are going to be giving away $300 Amazon gift cards every 30 minutes and 3 Kindle Scribes. For those who haven't seen it yet, the Scribe is a combination Kindle and digital notebook. Let me tell you, I want one in the worst way, but alas, I'm not eligible to win one. Sometimes it's just hard to be me, you know? Oh, well. Rather than ponder the unfairness of life, let's move on to our keynote session today. What do you say? This one features Ned Bellavance, a Microsoft Azure MVP, cloud expert, and author. He is here to give us an overview of cloud security, and that is always so informative and entertaining. So I cannot wait to hear from him. Ned, the ball is in your court. So take the shot.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Ned Bellavance, nedinthecloud.com. Thank you for joining today. I wanted to take a moment to discuss building trust through consistency. What do I mean by that? Let's examine some of the terms. For consistency, what I'm mostly speaking about here is consistency of operations, process, and tooling, and how that builds trust within an organization that users can rely and trust the tools and processes you've put in place to achieve their goals. They don't have to shop around for another solution, and they can trust that the available solution is configured with sane defaults and best practices. There are a few driving forces behind the embarrassment of tools we've collected, and there's a critical need to rationalize and standardize on fewer tools. Let's start with the fact that you're probably going to be running multi-cloud on and off-prem for the foreseeable future. You may have already adopted one cloud, and you probably still have stuff on premises, and there's a really good chance you'll expand out to other clouds. And that's not even counting all the software as a service solutions you've adopted over the last 5 years. As you expand to all these different realms, there's a pretty good chance that the teams responsible for each domain adopted new tools and processes for dealing with each new environment. But adding more tools and disparate processes increases admin overhead, creates inconsistencies in implementation, and it introduces a cost in terms of time and licensing for each new tool. Which tool do I want to use if I need to back up an EC2 instance? Which tool should I use if I want to monitor our new AKS cluster? How do I reset a password for my user across 12 different SaaS products? Having a clear and consistent answer for these questions is going to help people do things right the first time and also lead to less confusion about what standards and best practices should be implemented across these different clouds and technologies. Consistency across operations, process, and tooling is going to be critical as part of your cloud adoption strategy. To better illustrate what I mean, let's walk through a few examples. To see how this might be implemented, we'll start with identity management. There's probably nothing more important as you adopt the cloud than having a consistent and sane identity management solution. Every public cloud has its own identity service, as does every software as a service application. If you think about the proliferation of identities throughout your organization, an individual user might have 10 or 20 or 50 different identities, depending on how many different platforms they're interacting with. That can be incredibly difficult to administer if you're managing each of those identities separately. And yet, that's what I've seen across many organizations. When a user leaves the company or is compromised, you have to manually disable or reset the account across 20 different platforms, and hope you didn't miss one. The solution is to implement an identity platform that manages all of the identities in your public clouds, software as a service, and on-premises together. Not only does it serve to manage identities, but ideally, it provides authentication services as well. Rather than maintaining credentials and identities and all these different cloud offerings, instead you have a centralized identity platform that takes care of it and can provide additional benefits in that you can consistently implement policies like multi-factor authentication for your users. You can monitor machine-based identities and retire them when they're no longer needed, and you can implement dynamic credentials where applicable. If I were looking to standardize my toolset and enhance security, I would start with identity. Another example is backup and recovery. You need to protect your workloads, no matter where they are. Every cloud platform has some sort of native backup product or service. However, using the native backup product for every cloud means you're going to have to deal with a different set of software for every single cloud, plus your on-premises. It is much simpler to manage if you have a single backup solution that supports multiple platforms. Of course, that solution needs to meet the needs of each team in your organization, whether they are infrastructure-focused, application-focused, or managing the SaaS real estate. A cohesive solution should adopt a policy-driven approach to your backups. Policy-driven means that you're not setting schedules, you're setting policies for how you want backups to happen. A platinum policy or a gold policy determines how long data is retained and how frequent the backups occur. And when you need to amend the policy or create a new one, you don't have to do so in 10 different places and hope, again, you didn't miss one. Any backup and recovery solution should also support automatic discovery, so when new workloads are spun up, they are automatically discovered by your backup solution and added to the appropriate policy based off of metadata tags or some other value. We're not just talking about virtual machines either. You also need to protect the data that's in your software as a service. For instance, in Microsoft 365, you probably want to back up your emails and your SharePoint sites. There's also containers and Kubernetes being deployed by your application teams. A lot of backup products don't natively support Kubernetes, which means yet another possible solution being added to your organization as your adoption of Kubernetes rises. Just like with VMs 15 years ago, backup solutions are catching up to cloud-native applications, and I'd recommend making sure you can support both legacy and modern apps. With the distributed nature of applications these days, it's ever more important that your backup solution also supports not only crash consistency, but also application consistency. Your application teams would really appreciate it. Otherwise, they may go find another solution and, well, we're back to square one. The last example I want to bring up is monitoring and logging. Once again, every public cloud has their own monitoring and logging solution. However, implementing each of those solutions individually is going to be fairly difficult and expensive. Instead, determine what each team actually needs to monitor. Your application teams have different requirements than your infrastructure teams. You want to find a solution that meets your team's requirements and that works across multiple clouds and on-premises. Unlike backup, there's probably no one solution that checks all the boxes here. Some monitoring and logging will be team-specific, so you may not have the same monitoring solution across all your different teams, but at least your monitoring solution can support multiple platforms. Your networking team may need monitoring software that can trace packet flows or monitor the wide area network, and that solution should work across AWS, Azure, GCP, and on-prem. Your application teams are probably more concerned about application performance management using specialized instrumentation. Meeting team requirements while minimizing solution sprawl is a difficult balancing act, but it's critical for a high-functioning organization. To sum up, multi-cloud is the reality we're functioning in today. You're going to be working in multiple clouds and using software as a service. Tool sprawl is driven by so many different platforms and applications, each with their own native tooling and solutions. Now is the time to rationalize your tools, focusing on cross-cloud coverage and meeting your team's needs. Reducing tool sprawl can also reduce costs, which your finance people will enjoy, and it can streamline the administration of your environments. Lastly, consider implementing a platform engineering team or cloud center of excellence to help with the rationalization process and to standardize things in the future. Standardization and rationalization isn't a one-time exercise, but a continual process of improvement, building trust with your internal teams through consistency. At least those are my thoughts. I'm curious to hear what you think. You can reach out on LinkedIn or find me on my website, netinthecloud.com. Thanks once again for watching and enjoy the rest of today's event.
Thank you, Ned. We will do our best. Always a pleasure to have Ned on, isn't it? Such good information in a concise format. So I got a poll question for you right now, everyone. Let us know what your time frame is for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company. We are now firmly to 2024. In fact, we are January 31st, aren't we? The last day of the first month of 2024, and it already feels like it's flying by. So let us know what's happening with your upgrades. Always important for us and our sponsors to know kind of where you are at in that process. So keep those coming and leave it up for a few more seconds before we get going with our sessions now. Okay, thanks for voting. Thanks for continuing to show your interest in that. And we will move on at this point. Our first presentation in the MegaCast today comes from TierPoint, and presenting for TierPoint is Derek Townsend, a cloud solutions architect. Derek, welcome to the MegaCast, and thank you for being here today. I am now going to turn this sucker over to you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today. My name is Derek Townsend, and I'm a cloud solutions architect with TierPoint. I am here to discuss with you achieving security best practices in public cloud, chiefly Azure and Amazon Web Services. All right, a little bit about myself. I've been in IT for over 20 years. I've been an architect for 8 years, and I've been dealing primarily with AWS and Azure. This has been around designing solutions for customers related to IaaS and PaaS services. And we're ready to begin. Thank you. I would like to now discuss the organization that I am with. I work for a company called TierPoint, and we are a data center services provider. We have 43 data centers across the United States, but in addition to that, we also provide professional and managed services for both AWS and Azure environments. The first topic I would like to discuss is the public cloud shared responsibility model. This model is a framework that outlines the security obligations of both the public cloud provider, in this case Amazon Web Services, and their customers. In this model, AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud, meaning they handle the infrastructure, hardware, software, and networking components. On the other hand, customers are responsible for security in the cloud, which includes safeguarding their data, applications, and configurations. This approach allows both parties to focus on what they do best while still ensuring a comprehensive security environment. AWS provides tools and services to help customers meet their security responsibilities. One of the key components of any environment, but in particular public cloud, is identity and access management, which includes strengthening authentication and managing access effectively. It is important to utilize strong authentication mechanisms. It is important also to use complex passwords and to regularly update security certificates. When able, it benefits an organization to utilize SAML or OAuth authentication as well. Role-based access control is a feature of public cloud environments, and it's important to define user roles carefully and to assign minimum necessary permissions for a user to perform their job. As a result of this, it is also important to regularly audit role assignments. One of the key features of public cloud environments is multi-factor authentication. It's important to always enable multi-factor authentication for any administrative account, and also to encourage or enforce MFA for all of your users. When necessary, you can utilize a hardware-based token. I would say the key takeaways of these IAM features and functionalities is that strong authentication and fine-grained permissions are essential for robust cloud security, and that MFA significantly enhances user authentication and should be standard practice. I'd like to touch on the technologies that are involved in both AWS and Azure also for managing identity and access management. The name in Amazon is pretty straightforward. The service itself is called AWS IAM. It helps to control access to any resource in AWS and allows for one to manage users, groups, and permissions within one or more AWS accounts. It also provides features such as MFA, which we had mentioned earlier, identity federation, and access control policies. On the Azure side, we have Azure Active Directory, and this is a cloud-based identity solution created by Microsoft. It has features as well, like multi-factor authentication and single sign-on, and also utilizes role-based access control. It can also integrate an on-premises Active Directory controller with cloud-based applications, and it supports various protocols, including OAuth, SAML, and OpenID. Network isolation and segmentation are crucial in public cloud environments for several reasons. Chief among these are security. By isolating networks, one can limit the attack surface area. If one segment is compromised, the impact can be contained, making it harder for attackers to move laterally across the environment. Regulatory requirements also often mandate that sensitive data is isolated from other types of data, and network segmentation can help achieve this. Smaller segmented networks also are easier to monitor, manage, and troubleshoot. In addition to this, AWS security groups and Azure network security groups serve similar purposes but are part of each of these different cloud ecosystems. Both act as a virtual firewall to control inbound and outbound traffic to network interfaces, VMs, and other resources. Security groups are stateful, meaning that if you allow an incoming request from an IP, the response is automatically allowed regardless of the outbound rules. Security groups typically are associated with elastic network interfaces on the AWS side and can be applied to multiple instances, and they are typically also scoped to a VPC specifically. On the Azure side, these are also stateful security groups, but they will allow you to assign priority to rules. And they come with a set of rules that can be overridden by creating additional rules with higher priority. And these are typically associated with subnets or a network interface and are scoped at the virtual network level. AWS WAF, AWS Shield are both services that protect applications running in AWS. WAF, which is Web Application Firewall, protects those web apps from various attacks by filtering and monitoring HTTP and PS traffic. And they're customizable because they allow you to create custom rules to block, allow, or monitor web requests based on various conditions like IP addresses, HTTP headers, and so on. And they also integrate with other AWS services. AWS Shield itself was designed to protect against distributed denial of service or DDoS attacks. And Shield provides additional security against larger and more sophisticated attacks, in addition to offering a 24/7 DDoS response team at AWS. Azure Sentinel is a cloud-native security information and event management platform that collects data across users, devices, applications, and infrastructure, both on-prem and across multiple cloud providers. It'll use AI and analytics to identify security anomalies and potential threats, and it allows for automated responses to security incidents. These services are essential for enhancing cloud security, offering various levels of protection to meet different organizational needs. I wanted to illustrate here what a sort of typical traffic flow may look like for an application, where we would have a client submit a request to a web server located in this case in Azure. The application gateway would intercept that packet and examine it. The packets passed inspection, the gateway would send those to the backend VM. When that packet hits Azure, a user-defined route in the app gateway would push it to the firewall, at which point the firewall would run security checks on the packets, and if they pass the tests, they would forward those packets to the app VM. The VM responds and sets the destination IP to the app gateway. User-defined routes in the VM subnet redirect those packets to the Azure firewall, at which point the firewall forwards the packets to the app gateway and the gateway answers the client. Encryption is a critical aspect of security in public cloud environments for several reasons, chiefly data privacy, compliance, data integrity, and access control. Encrypting data ensures that even if unauthorized access occurs, the data remains unreadable without a key. Many regulations like GDPR, HIPAA, and PCI require data to be encrypted both at rest and in transit when stored in public cloud environments. Encryption mechanisms can help verify that data has not been tampered with, preserving its integrity. And coupled with proper key management, encryption helps to enforce access controls. Only authorized personnel with the correct decryption keys can access the data. Encryption protects sensitive information from being exposed in shared or multi-tenant cloud environments. And in the event of a data breach, encrypted data is significantly less vulnerable, as it would require additional computational efforts to decrypt. By employing encryption strategies, organizations can significantly enhance the security posture of their data and applications in public cloud environments. Classifying data and sensitive information in public cloud environments is important for several key reasons, security being the chief reason. Knowing which data is sensitive helps in applying appropriate security measures like encryption or access controls to protect that data. In addition to that, we have compliance, which we had mentioned earlier, resource allocation regions. Not all data requires the same level of security. Classification allows you to allocate security resources more effectively, focusing on the most critical data. Access control, classification guides who should and should not have access to particular sets of data, reducing the risk of unauthorized access. And obviously auditing and monitoring. Classified data can be monitored more closely for any unauthorized access or suspicious activities, helping in quicker incident detection and response. Knowing the importance and sensitivity of data helps in making decisions about its storage, retention, and eventual deletion as well. Proper classification of data and sensitive information is foundational for a robust security posture and effective data management in public cloud environments. Aligning public cloud security with regulatory standards involves several steps and best practices. Firstly, it's important to identify applicable regulations that apply to your organization, such as HIPAA or PCI. It's also important to conduct a gap analysis to assess your current security posture against the requirements of the regulatory standards to identify gaps. As we had mentioned in a previous slide, data classification, encryption, and access control also factor in to your overall strategy for aligning public cloud security with a regulatory standard. Documentation is important, obviously, for auditing reasons and maintaining an audit trail. Maintaining detailed audit trails of data access or modification are often required for audits, and conducting periodic security audits and risk assessments ensure ongoing compliance and identify areas for improvement. Lastly, developing and maintaining an incident response plan that aligns with a regulatory requirement or standard is significant and also required for reporting and mitigating security incidents. Many cloud providers offer tools to help maintain compliance. Among these tools are services such as Azure Policy, Azure Blueprints, AWS Artifact, AWS CloudTrail, amongst others. By taking a comprehensive and structured approach, one can effectively align a public cloud with the security measures that apply to their vertical or sector, therefore reducing risk and ensuring legal compliance. Both AWS and Azure offer a wide range of security services designed to help organizations protect their cloud-based assets. On the AWS side, we have IAM, Shield, and WAF, which we've already discussed. In addition to those services, we also have Amazon Guard Duty, which is a threat detection service that continuously monitors for malicious activity. AWS CloudTrail, which logs API calls, providing a history of changes to resources. And Security Hub, which is a centralized view of security alerts and compliance statuses. On the Azure side, we have Azure Key Vault, which stores and manages sensitive information like keys, secrets, and certificates. Security Center, which is a central hub for monitoring and managing the security of resources. Sentinel, which we've previously mentioned. Azure Firewall, also, which we've previously mentioned, which is a stateful firewall service. Azure Policy allows an organization to set requirements and enforce those requirements for any sort of resource that exists within a subscription. And Azure Monitor, which is a collector that analyzes and acts on telemetry data from Azure and on-premises resources. Both AWS and Azure offer comprehensive sets of security services designed to address various aspects of cloud security, from identity and access management to data protection and threat detection. Embedding security into DevOps processes, commonly known as DevSecOps, is particularly crucial in public cloud environments. Here's how an organization can achieve scalable protection. Using infrastructure as code templates to define cloud resource configurations ensures that they are consistently secure by design. Tools like CloudFormation, ARM templates, and Terraform help to achieve this end. Integrating security scanning tools into the CI/CD pipeline to automatically scan code and cloud configurations for vulnerabilities is also important. Services like AWS Code Pipeline with built-in security checks or Azure DevOps with Azure Security Center can help. If you're using containers, ensure that they are scanned for vulnerabilities. Solutions like AWS ECR or Azure Container Registry offer integrated scanning. Automatically validate that the infrastructure that you're creating follows compliance requirements utilizing services such as AWS Config or Azure Policy. It's important also to establish feedback mechanisms between security and DevOps teams to continuously improve security postures. By integrating these practices into DevOps processes, organizations can ensure that security is not a bottleneck, but an enabler of faster and safer software delivery in public cloud environments. Disaster recovery in public cloud environments is critical not just from an availability perspective, but also from a security standpoint. Data protection is a key item as a part of this. In the event of a cyber attack, such as ransomware, data corruption, a robust DR plan can allow organizations to restore from a clean backup, ensuring data integrity and availability. In addition to that, it can be used to mitigate a DDoS attack, provides for quick incident response, and also allows for isolation and investigation in the event of a breach. Compromised systems can be isolated and traffic can be rerouted to DR environments. In addition to that, many regulations mandate that organizations have a DR plan in place to protect sensitive data. Cloud-based DR solutions also offer the flexibility to simulate disaster scenarios, allowing organizations to test their security protocols in a controlled environment without affecting production systems. In essence, while DR is typically associated with business continuity, its importance to security cannot be understated. A well-designed DR plan in a public cloud environment acts as a safety net, ensuring that organizations can swiftly recover from security incidents while minimizing adverse impacts. Security updates and patch management are essential in public cloud environments for several key reasons. Chief among those are vulnerability mitigation and compliance. Software inevitably has vulnerabilities, and regularly updating and patching your cloud services and applications help to close those gaps before they can be exploited. Many regulations like GDPR or HIPAA require up-to-date security measures, which often include regular patching. This helps to reduce the attack surface area. Often outdated software becomes a target for cyber criminals. By applying updates and patches, one minimizes the attack surface. In addition to that, a security breach due to outdated software can significantly damage the reputation of an organization. Keeping systems updated shows a commitment to customer data security. In addition to that, organizations that maintain a robust security posture by staying updated are better positioned to compete in the marketplace, where consumers are increasingly concerned about data security. Both AWS and Azure offer their own security update and patch management systems, chiefly AWS Systems Manager and Azure Update Management. Leveraging automation tools can be important as well to schedule and apply the patches. In addition to that, monitoring patching status is crucial to ensuring that all of the affected systems are updated in a timely manner. Wanted to touch briefly on some lessons learned from past security incidents in both AWS and Azure. Some of these items include unsecured AWS S3 buckets. These expose customer data, and that can often lead to issues or hijacking in some cases. The mitigation plan for this is implementing bucket policies and utilizing AWS config for automated compliance checks to ensure that it's meeting the requirements. In addition to that, oftentimes Azure SQL databases can be exposed where they're publicly accessible, have a public endpoint. A mitigation plan for this is to deploy Azure Firewall and configure proper network security groups to limit access to these SQL servers. In addition to that, oftentimes we will see denial of service attacks from other regions on customers within the United States or elsewhere. These manifest themselves in sustained DDoS attacks. We can utilize services such as Azure DDoS protection for network layer security in these events. And finally, for brute force intrusion, oftentimes actors can get unauthorized access through an open SSH port on a virtual machine. It's important to close those ports and implement something like AWS WAF for real-time application layer protection. Thank you all for joining today. We hope you found this presentation helpful. If you would like to speak to someone about your cloud needs, you can reach us at www.tierpoint.com or sales@tierpoint.com. We have also listed our phone number on this slide as well. Thank you again and have a good day.
All right. Thanks for that awesome presentation, Derek. Really got a lot of response, a lot of questions from the attendees here. And now it is time for our next poll question. Let us know, based on that, what additional information you'd like about the TierPoint solution. Keep voting while we move on here. Looks like there are a lot of questions, as I mentioned, that we can't get to those today, unfortunately, but the TierPoint team will do their best to respond to every question that you ask, so don't worry about that. I also want to remind everyone about the handouts. We have got a PDF from TierPoint that provides an overview of their managed public cloud solutions. Be sure to check that out if you'd like more detail. Thanks to everyone who responded to the poll. We appreciate that feedback. And I'm going to leave it up here one more moment while we get to the first prize giveaway of the day. As I mentioned, we're giving away lots of $300 Amazon gift cards. And the winner of the very first of the day is Ken Santoro from Texas. Congratulations to you, Ken. We will be in touch about claiming your prize. And with that, folks, we are going to move to our next presentation. This one comes from Axis, and presenting for Axis today are Jay Tilson and John Spiegel. You can see their titles right up there. Gentlemen, it is great to have you here today. And I think Jay is going to be speaking first. So, Jay, I'm going to leave this up to you to get started. The floor.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. In this session, we're going to talk about leveraging SSE for zero trust in cloud environments and more. Before we get started, let me just introduce you to your host for today. My name is Jay Tilson, and I am joined by my colleague and my friend John Spiegel. Together, John and I have over 50 years of enterprise experience running large infrastructure and security teams. We spent the bulk of our careers sitting in your chairs and have experienced the same daily challenges as you. And not just those technical challenges, but the cultural, the budget and the resource challenges also. Recently, we left our enterprise roles and moved to a company called Axis Security, which is now part of HP Aruba Networking. We made this move because we both believe networking and security are marred in complexity. Stitching together a bunch of solutions that worked in the early 2000s no longer works in this new world of a hybrid workforce. Over the years, we found that the old approach created even more challenges rather than solutions, and when deployed, it really looked like a game of mousetrap. We both believe there is a better way of doing this called consolidation. I think we all have to agree that change isn't coming, but that it's already here. We now live in a world of hybrid worker. Not only are we moving more and more applications to the cloud, which is a trend that really isn't stopping anytime soon, but our users are also now more mobile than ever. They are now accessing systems and data from everywhere, not just offices, but also from their homes, airports, hotels and coffee shops. There are also more devices than ever before. We now have IoT devices, smart devices, as well as more and more BYOD, and the number has continued to increase at an alarming rate. Along with these changes comes more and more cyber threats from an increasing number of strategic criminals. The statistics are extremely alarming. In the last 12 months, 65% of businesses have reported some form of cyber attack. And in the first half of 2023, ransomware attacks increased by an alarming 49% versus the first 6 months of 2022. Cybercrime is expected to cost companies more than $10.5 trillion globally by 2025, up from $3 trillion in 2015. All of the top analysts expect this number and the sophistication of attacks to continue to grow over the next decade and beyond. This change that we have all witnessed over the last few years has meant that the concept of zero trust is now back at the forefront of everyone's mind. Zero trust has been mandated by the US government in an executive order and is part of many cyber regulations across the globe. This means that it has become a critical part of every CISO's strategy. For us, however, we like to think about this concept of adaptive trust. which is a framework built on zero trust and at its core of everything we do. This is the notion of continuing to adapt connectivity based on changes in context such as identity, device, policy, application, and data. There is no implicit trust, but we establish trust that is contextual and adaptive. For work to get done, users would inevitably require access. In other words, they will need to establish trust. Adaptive trust continuously ensures that only specific users gain access to specific applications, and we use API-based integrations between our core security services to automate this process.
Ultimately, these technologies are the core elements of what we call SASE, or Secure Access Service Edge. Introduced by Gartner in 2019, SASE addresses the traditional challenge presented to every network and security engineer when faced with how to deploy a new application. Do I favor speed or do I favor security? SASE overcomes this dilemma by moving services to POPs so they are as close as possible to the user or resource. SASE is delivered in two technology stacks. On one side, you have WAN service edges. So this is connectivity. On the other side, SSE or security, which is on the right. IT teams are turning to SASE for modern secure access, but also seeking vendor consolidation. In fact, 41% said they are adopting SASE by the end of 2022, and 75% said they are adopting SASE in the next year or so. We recently partnered with a company called Cybersecurity Insiders to conduct the first ever research on SSE adoption. We wanted to understand where people were on their journey. The report has some really good insights and is well worth reading. But for this presentation, I'm just going to pull out a few key takeaways. First, the report shows that both elements of SASE, WAN Edge and SSE, are on the rise. Secondly, it's interesting to note that SSE is seen as a strategic initiative to secure the workforce, with 39% of the respondents viewing it as an important part of their zero trust strategy, even over critical technologies like identity and endpoint security. And lastly, I think more importantly, as companies look to implement SASE, 67% of businesses start by implementing their SASE strategy with SSE versus WAN service edges.
So let's just remind ourselves about the three approaches in which we can secure our workforce today. Firstly, we have the hub and spoke design. This is a progression from the old castle and moat design where everyone was inside the perimeter. But this design still focuses on having on-premise security, even though users and their data are moving to the cloud. With this design, there is still a heavy reliance on MPLS and internal data centers. And in my experience, this model is complex to configure and to administrate. You need the feed-in water applications to ensure they remain secure, and you also have to go through hardware renewal cycles and continually patch all of your critical systems to protect them against attack. Another option we have is virtualized cloud firewalls. This is an evolution of the hub and spoke design, moving some of your legacy-based security systems that used to run on hardware to cloud-based solutions. The aim here is to remove some of the burdens of keeping systems secure. However, in a lot of cases, this still meant backhauling internet traffic to the corporate data center. This design is supposed to make things simpler to manage, but really, in my experience, it led to further complexity and cost. Then there is SSE. In my mind, this is the design of the future. This is delivering all of your connectivity and security tools from the cloud. And gone are the days of patching your systems. SSE is truly going to stand side by side with you in the battle against the bad guys. So let's look a little bit at how our SSE platform works. The platform was designed on day one to bring networking and security together, which both me and John love. It is all about harmonizing what in the past was a symphony that played as individuals versus as a team. So in the past, the enterprise would have to select a vendor for networking, a vendor for security, a vendor for DLP, a vendor for CASB, one for cloud security, etc., etc. And as we all know, this leads to operational complexity, high cost, and ultimately poor security design. Our platform, on the other hand, starts with a clean slate. As we've discussed, it's built on this concept of adaptive trust. So instead of placing the employee or the third party and their device directly on the network, the platform starts with a series of checks to verify the identity of the user and the posture of the machine. The platform then balances this request for application and data access. And if the calculation does not add up, then the employee is just not granted access. So building on the concept of adaptive trust, our platform provides global reach with over 1,000 edge locations. And all of our services, SWIG, CASB and ZTNA, are in our POPs. It really brings together what were previously individual point solutions into a single integrated platform, all delivered via the public cloud. This enables secure access for your remote employees, for your office workers, and those critical third-party resources.
As you dive deeper into SSE, let's talk about what each element does. Let's break down those services that make up the framework of the future that Jay Tilson just called out. As you dive deeper into these SSE solutions, you'll find that each emphasizes one of these key technology areas. Maybe it's SWIG because that's where that company started. Or maybe it's CASB because that was the target market when they were a startup. For HPE SSE, we take a different approach. We believe that the future is one based on zero trust. Only provide the resources required to perform a function and nothing more. We built our platform to deliver zero trust network access. The strategy, it's at the foundation and center of everything we do. It's where we built our technology. We believe the future is about delivering secure access for applications, whether they are in the cloud or in your private data center. Services must be delivered same, no matter based on the location, with security checks such as MFA, device posture checks, and matching the request based on business policy. We've solved this in an elegant manner for both your employees and those difficult to secure third-party resources. Building up on a zero trust network access foundation, the Access SSE platform then adds features like SWIG for fundamental for securing your employees from the internet. Or maybe it's leveraging a SaaS application like Salesforce or O365. If so, our Cloud Service Access Broker or CASB has you covered. Secure your access to SaaS applications with easy to read business policy. Or maybe you want to understand the user experience. How's an application performing on your network? If so, digital experience monitoring is available. Quickly uncover where an application issue is. Is it your network? Is it the device? Is it the application? DEM has you covered there.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into how all of this works. As we previously stated, our platform includes all of the core functions of SSE. This means that access can be granted to the internet, SaaS applications, the public cloud, or applications hosted in your data center, all from a single UI. So first, the user will request access. Please note that this can be with or without an agent, so that we can cover those difficult third-party and contractor use cases where an agent cannot be installed. Next, the platform auto-mediates the request for access at scale. Unlike legacy VPNs, there are no pass-through connections. Users do not get an IP address on your network, so they cannot go wherever they want, whenever they want. The system will then prompt for MFA and then automatically verify against your defined access policy. This is based on user, device, and application context, as we've previously discussed. Once everything balances, it then brokers smart and surgical connections that can help minimize your attack surface and prevent that lateral movement. As previously mentioned, we have a single data lake for all of these services, which allows full visibility for all traffic. Please note that the platform continuously inspects the posture of the device and the user, and if anything changes, access is adapted or severed within 60 seconds. This all adds up to increased protection against the bad guys, while significantly reducing your costs and that complexity that we all hate. But most importantly, it empowers your remote workforce.
So you may be asking, what are the benefits of an SSE approach? First, it increases your security posture by providing zero trust access to all services and applications. You eliminate your attack surface and reduce your exposure. You also get to enforce least privilege access to all applications and services, including private applications, SaaS, and as well the internet. This will help you protect your business against things like ransomware or data loss. Secondly, deliver the best experience possible for your end users and IT administrators. End users receive quick, seamless access to applications, services, and data every time because of our intelligent, smart routing across almost 1,000 edge locations. Also, IT admins can control access centrally with granularity to make it easy to secure your business from a holistic experience. Lastly, you improve your business with one solution for all secured access needs. You need to simplify and unify your network and security functions and minimize complexity by reducing the number of point products. Additionally, you get to save money by reducing reliance on appliance-based security solutions and effortlessly scale with our cloud-delivered platform. Customers, they are the key. Their challenges are similar to yours. For instance, take the city of San Jose. Their challenge was the hybrid workforce. Like many in the post-pandemic world, they embraced remote work, but also knew the power of creating a strong work culture. The city adopted a 3-day remote and 2-day in the office approach. This blend allowed them to provide the best of both worlds. But if you don't have an application system to support it, worker productivity declines. After conducting an extensive search, the city selected HPE's SSE solution as their platform. Why? It came down to simplicity, as well as the ability to support challenging zero-trust network protocols like voice over IP, ICMP, and server-initiated protocols to allow patching of remote machines, while also maintaining a strong security posture. For them, the days of VPN are gone. Or maybe it's like Procter & Gamble. Another customer with their challenge was third-party access. Being one of the largest multinationals out there, their base of contractors was high. Their need is how to secure them, but also maintain intellectual property. In the past, this meant sending thousands and thousands of laptops out there. The turn time to onboard a contractor was high, along with the cost. By moving to HPE's SSE, Procter & Gamble was able to leverage our agentless approach. This meant that the contractor could now use a BYOD solution. The result for them? $10 million per year saved, and the time went from 24 days down to 24 hours to onboard a contractor. The return on investment was sub 1 month. That's the power of HPE SSE. Lastly, VisionWorks, a national optical chain. I'm sure you've seen one of their stores. Their challenge was legacy hardware. Like many companies, they were sending their network traffic to the data center for security treatments. This hairpinning of traffic slowed down their business, as well as was expensive from a hardware approach. By moving to HPE's SSE solution, they were able to reduce their network investment, optimize their network flows, as well as secure their clinics. Return on investment was quick, and it was realized as fast as the deployment took less than a week. That's right, 700 stores in a matter of days. Traffic optimized with a zero-trust security approach, plus visibility. By HPE's digital experience tool. Wins all around. So where do you go from here? Making the move is a journey, and we're here to support you. But where you start, that's up to you. It comes down to solving critical business challenges. So maybe your need is connecting your branch or retail locations to improve connectivity and security. If so, start with Aruba's best-in-class SD-WAN solution, Edge Connect. Or maybe your challenge is how to secure your remote workforce or third-party contractors. If so, start with the most innovative SSE solution on the market. If you choose SSE as your first step, then we recommend starting with ZTNA. It's the foundation. It's also going to give you the quick win and help you see immediate value. The idea here is to standardize connectivity from a private application perspective. Then start to move on to other pressing business problems. Maybe it's securing your workforce from the internet. If so, leverage our Secure Web Gateway, or SWIG. Protect your employees from malware, filter connectivity based on business policy, and leverage sandboxing features. Next up, secure your SaaS applications. Use the inline CASB to prevent exfiltration of sensitive data, for example, from an Excel file to Dropbox. This can be easily accomplished in a simple policy statement. Or maybe your needs are more complex, like securing O365 or Salesforce. If so, use the out-of-band CASB feature. Centralize management and secure those critical SaaS solutions. The main takeaway here is this is a journey. You need to map it out based on your business needs. What outcomes are you looking to deliver in 2024? Start there, then start to layer on more outcomes. Leverage the platform to simplify your security solutions. Simplification lowers your management burden, your costs, and results in greater security outcomes. And keep zero trust at the center of your strategy.
We would really like to thank everyone for joining us today. We really do hope you found this session useful. If you would like to discuss anything further, then please feel free to scan the QR code that you see on the screen or contact one of us directly. Have a great day.
All right. Wow. What an awesome presentation, guys. Thank you so much for that. While we get your questions ready to answer, I'm going to put up the next poll question. So let us know what additional information you would like about the Axis security solution. Important feedback here. So operators are standing by, as they say. Just let us know what you want from them next while we get these questions ready to go. And on the line right now, joining us is John from that presentation. John, are you ready to go with some Q&A today?
Let's go.
All right. Glad to hear. So first question today, this comes from Holden. He wants to know, how does Axis Security ensure seamless integration with existing security infrastructure, including SIM solutions, identity and access management systems, and other security tools?
Yeah, identity is really the foundation of security in the future. And we do support out of the box your major IDP providers, whether that's Azure, Ping, Okta, several others. We also have our own IDP, and that is really for the case where you may have a contractor or a third party and you don't want to pay for that license associated with some of the other supporter IDP products out there. So we do have that. And then in terms of SIM, we support Splunk, obviously, straight out of the box, and have API integration to essentially stream the telemetry out of the system into whatever SIM product you want to choose, standardized format.
Great. Lots of options there, which is exactly what we need. Okay, Chad wants to know, how does Axis Security ensure compliance with industry standards and regulations, and what certifications does the platform hold?
Currently, SOC 2, definitely out of the box. We are currently in the process of doing FedRAMP, so expect that by the end of the year. PCI, definitely in process. So a number of the key certifications out there we certainly support.
Okay. Excellent. Glad to hear that. Well, I want to remind everyone that the poll is still up. We want you to keep voting. I also want to remind everyone about the handouts. We have got a PDF from Axis that provides more detail on Atmos, which John and Jay went over in the presentation here. Check that out if you'd like more detail. Let's do another question here in the meantime, John. Let's see. Here's a good one. Based on the Gartner SSE framework, there are quite a few products that are consolidated into one. Does this impact the speed in which you ramp up a platform like this?
Ooh, great question, because how people define SASE, pretty straightforward from Gartner's perspective. They've laid out their vision for SASE, but how vendors go to market and put together their product, it can be in several different ways. There's a concept called portfolios versus platforms. Portfolios are where companies gather these products that were previously really point products. Could be a CASB, SWIG, DLP, ZTNA, SD-WAN, and essentially acquire their way into the space. The other option, and this is the one that we have selected, is to build a platform. Start with our premise, which is really zero trust network access, and use that as the foundation. And then on top of that, build a series of features. In our case, it's SWIG for protecting you from threats from the internet, or CASB to highlight where shadow IT may be or control SaaS applications, DLP to understand if you're having data leakage, and then also digital experience monitoring. Those items are just features on top of our platform, which is really based on zero trust network access. So as you evaluate various vendors in the space, kind of pay attention to how they built their products and put them together. What you don't want to do, and I'll be honest, is deal with a lot of the technical debt of a company that kind of acquired their way into the process where they're stitching those products together. My opinion is it's best to go really with a platform approach where those features were built on top of a existing foundation. And that's really an advantage that we have. Our product debuted in 2019, so we were able to take advantage of not only cloud native applications, but also underpin it with zero trust. So evaluate who you're looking at.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, the technical debt is becoming a bigger and bigger issue as we go along as well. And avoiding all of that is certainly going to be a benefit to every organization. Well, John, it has been such a delight to have you on today to help inform us and educate us on what Axis is doing. And thank you so much for imparting all this great information.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. And I want to remind everyone that this is going to stay up another minute or so. The information here about the poll question on Axis, keep voting in that and let them know what you want to hear from them next. And while we do that, I'm going to get to the next prize drawing. This is our second $300 Amazon gift card of the day. And the winner of this one is Carrie LeBlanc from Arizona. Hey, congratulations, Carrie. Sit tight, and you'll be hearing from us about claiming your prize. And with that, we're going to move to our next presentation of the day, everyone. This one comes from KnowBe4. Presenting for KnowBe4 is one of my all-time favorite presenters, Roger Grimes. I know Roger from way back. He used to write for me a little bit back in my days running some magazines. He is just as knowledgeable as it gets, and it is always fun to have him on. Roger, welcome to you today. You know what to do.
Thanks, everyone, for showing up for my top cloud security hacks and how you can avoid them. I'm going to be talking a lot about cloud security and really how it impacts you. And just know that this talk used to be about an hour long, and I'm fitting most of that content into the next 24 minutes. I'm going to be talking fast, but if you've heard me speak before, I always talk fast, but I'm going to be speaking a little bit faster than ever before. If you haven't met me before, my name is Roger Grimes. I've been doing computer security for like 35 years, and I've written 14 books. There's some of my books and over 1,300 magazine articles, a lot of them on cloud security. I work for KnowBe4. We're the world's largest security awareness training and simulated phishing platform vendor, and I love it. I've been with KnowBe4 going on 6 years, and it's been my favorite company ever. But today we're going to be talking about cloud security, specifically about the Cloud Security Alliance, top 11 threats. We'll talk about that briefly. And then I'm going to tell you a better way to think about cloud security threats, because really it's the way that you should be thinking about all cybersecurity threats, including cloud threats. And then we're going to talk about the top 5, or somewhere around the top 5 cloud security threats that you should be worried about and how you defend yourselves against those. So to start with, again, probably the world's #1 cloud security organization is the Cloud Security Alliance. I've belonged to it for many, many years, and I've been on a working group for many years. It's a really great, awesome organization. And if you're worried about cloud security, or if you want to get cloud security certified or whatever, you should check them out. And there's a lot of different chapters around the world. Every year they release a report on cloud security. They kind of have some cool names. This year, the last time they released a report recently, they called it the Pandemic 12 Deep Dive Report. I think the previous year it was the Treacherous 12 or something like that. But it's kind of the definitive go-to report for looking at cloud security threats. These are the top 11 threats that the Cloud Security Alliance identified. And if you have to secure your cloud security products or systems, you should definitely pay attention to this. And my top 5 that I'm going to cover come out of this list. But this is a great list, and you should familiarize yourself with this list. With that said, and I love this report, but it's really just a survey of different cloud service providers, and it doesn't really have actual data. It doesn't tell you exactly which ones are the worst ones to worry about and which ones not. And it doesn't have all types of threats in it. Like, it doesn't include denial of service attacks, which have been pretty big especially for the last couple of years. It's a bit vendor driven at times, so they're the ones being surveyed. And again, my biggest probably pet peeve is that there's no risk relevance, like, how much you should pay attention to #1 versus #11. It's not backed by hard data, but I'm going to show you some relevance in my top 5 as backed by hard data. And it's a hodgepodge mix of threats and causes of threats. And we're going to talk about that it's really common that cybersecurity reports mix up root causes of security attacks and then outcomes of security attacks. Like, if someone steals your password, that isn't necessarily a root cause of an attack. It's how they stole your password that would be the root cause of the attack. In many reports, most cybersecurity reports kind of mix that up. It's a small caveat that I have in there, and I'll talk more about that. But we'll certainly think about like data exfiltration. As another example, is an outcome of an attack. It's not an attack type. Someone didn't attack you with data exfiltration. They attacked you with social engineering, unpatched software misconfiguration, or something like that, and then were able to exfiltrate your data. But it's still, the Cloud Security Alliance reports should be read by anybody that's involved in cloud security or trying to protect their company, because it's one of the best reports out there. Really do love it. But I'm going to give you a better way of thinking about cloud security threats. And again, as I kind of just covered, is you need to focus on root causes of how hackers and their malware break into your company. We call them root cause attacks or something like that. Like some people, they're worried about ransomware. Oh my God, ransomware can attack me. Well, ransomware, as another example, is an outcome of how someone broke into you. You need to be worried about the root causes of how ransomware could break into you. Is it social engineering? Is it unpatched software? Is it misconfiguration? Is it eavesdropping? Ransomware is an outcome of a particular attack. And if you want to stop ransomware, you have to stop the root cause of that attack. Worrying about ransomware is like worrying about your brakes after your car has been stolen. You can do it, but it's not going to get you there. Here are the 13 root cause attack methods that I have been watching, learning over the last 35 years. Every single attack that I've ever read about, learned about, been involved in, and forensically troubleshooting has come because of one of these 13 root causes. And what you want to ask yourself is which of these 13 root causes are the ones that are the most likely ways that your company's computers and networks could be broken into, or the cloud products that you use. So every single attack, every single malware program begins as one of these 13 types of attacks. The biggest two for most companies is social engineering and unpatched software. Social engineering is involved in about 70 to 90% of all successful data breaches. And let me say, and has been since the beginning of network computers. It's not anything new. It's been that way for 3 decades. Unpatched software has been involved in about 20 to 40% of successful attacks over the years. These days, Mandiant at least says that that unpatched software is involved in about 33% of attacks. So social engineering is by far the number one way that most organizations are compromised, even with cloud computing. Unpatched software is number 2. And you need to really focus on those 2 things. And we'll cover some other things today, but those 2 are certainly the largest risk in most organizations and the largest risk in most cloud implementations. So anything that you can do to prevent that from happening, which includes your technical defenses and also training. So, preventing people from being socially engineered, telling them that they have to patch and that sort of stuff. Anything you do to prevent those things is a good thing to do. So let's go into the top cloud security threats that are out there. And I will say before we start that real quick, there were a lot of cloud-specific threats that a lot of us worried about for a long, long time. I've been in cloud security longer than the clouds have even been called clouds. But there were all these specific issues, like we were worried that an attacker would break into one tenant. Clouds are multi-tenant services with a bunch of different customers. And we're always worried that hackers would break into one tenant and then be able to see other tenants. And that kind of did happen a little bit, but it really never became anything big. But there have been some attacks that way over the years, but very minor. We were worried that there might be like cloud-based malware, like cloud-based viruses would take over all the tenants in the cloud service all at once. That hasn't happened yet. We were certainly worried about, most clouds are supported with virtual machine software, VMware or otherwise, and we were really worried about client-to-client attacks or host-to-client or client-to-host attacks. Those have occurred in a small way. Ransomware has taken advantage of that in some on-premises environments. But really, again, just virtual machine attacks just haven't become a big thing. We're also, worried about an attacker being able to find someone's deleted files or drive or data bucket and undelete it. There were some early attacks where some researchers were able to find some deleted data and undelete it, but largely that hasn't been a problem. And then there's certainly data ownership issues where, if your data is in the cloud, who owns it? And if the cloud vendor goes away or stops working, can you get your data back? Those are certainly, that's a valid concern, but so far hasn't turned out to be too huge of a problem. So the cloud specific issues that we were really worried about for a long time just really haven't taken off. And it's really been more traditional things that have been the undoing of cloud security. The real issues that are causing the problems aren't as sexy as these cloud issues that we worried about for a long time. But now clouds have been around 10 or 15 years, and these things really didn't take off. And so we worry a little bit less about them. But here are the things that we are going to talk about today. Here's the 5 issues. And we're going to start by talking about social engineering. Again, social engineering is involved in about 70 to 90% of all attacks. They're involved in at least 50% of all cloud attacks. And it's certainly something even the Cloud Security Alliance says you should be worried about. Here's a particular screen capture from their last security threat report. But you can see here that, they're just saying, like in this particular example, was a Dropbox attack in 2022 that the attackers began with a phishing campaign. Some employees clicked on malicious links and authenticated to a fake website with their GitHub credentials and even their one-time password multi-factor authentication mechanism. And this enabled the attackers privileged access to Dropbox's GitHub repositories where code was and data and that sort of stuff. So that was a really big attack back then, and it was all because of social engineering. Just as an example, they also social engineering is used to steal people's login credentials, You'll hear people like, oh, they got them because they stole the passwords. And a lot of reports will say, their passwords were stolen, and they'll kind of talk about that like that's the attack. No, the real question is that someone's password was stolen. How was it stolen? Was it social engineering, which is the most common way with about 50%? About 50% of the time when password credentials or tokens are stolen, it was because of social engineering. Or is it that they did some password guessing? They didn't steal the password, they guessed successfully at the password. Did somebody have hard-coded credentials? That happens in GitHub all the time, where programmers and developers will accidentally leave hard-coded logon credentials in their code that's publicly accessible. Or was it because an ex-employee had a login name and password someone didn't discontinue? Or did the hackers hack multi-factor authentication? So, again, when you hear about that, someone's password's been stolen or something like that, you have to ask, well, how did it happen? Was it social engineering? Was it unpatched software? Was it misconfiguration? You have to start thinking root causes here. A really common way that social engineering is used is something called this network session hijacking, or Microsoft calls it adversary in the middle. And that's where the hacker usually sends a phishing email to the targeted victim and says something like, the email appears to come from the legitimate cloud product. The victim, potential victim, doesn't know that that email's fake. Although if they looked on the link before they clicked on the link, they would probably see that that link isn't the valid URL. But with this type of attack, the hacker creates this social engineering email that looks like it's coming from the cloud provider, sends it to the potential victim with a link that they're supposed to click on to log in. And instead of logging into the cloud product, what the victim actually logs into when they click on that rogue URL is what's called a man-in-the-middle rogue transparent proxy website that then connects them to the real cloud service. But there is now, and in the man-in-the-middle transparent proxy website will show the victim, it will send everything from the cloud service to the victim, and everything the victim types in or clicks on is sent to the real cloud service. But there is this man-in-the-middle rogue transparent proxy website in the way where the hacker is collecting all that information, which could include login name and password, could be SAML token, could be a password, could be a one-time password code. This is really, really common. This is the vast majority. This is one of the largest way that attackers compromise cloud products, by social engineering the user into clicking on a rogue link, and then the attacker will steal the information the user sends, like login name and password or SAML token, or if they, once the victim logs in successfully to the real website, the website will send back, will also send back its own token in there, what's called access control token cookie. It's just really a cookie's just a text file, but the attacker grabs that, disconnects the real user, and then takes over the session. Here's a Microsoft report talking about these adversary in the middle attacks. Talking about how there was a large-scale phishing campaign that used adversary in the middle attacks to stole passwords and hijacked user sign-ons, even if the user had enabled multi-factor authentication. And this particular attack they were talking about had targeted over 10,000 organizations. And again, it's very common that people's credentials get compromised this way. The big Uber data breach, Uber's been breached a couple of times in the cloud. The way that they were breached in 2022 is it started with a hacker purchasing stolen credentials belonging to an Uber employee from a dark web marketplace. And your question again should always be, okay, how did that password get compromised? Usually it's social engineering. Probably the second most common reason is some website where they had a shared password got compromised, and so that login name and password is shared across multiple websites, and the attacker is able to compromise one website and go, well, let me go try it over here. But you can see here that they used the stolen credentials to access Uber, and eventually they were able to socially engineer the Uber employee on WhatsApp to get them to approve the push-based multi-factor authentication prompt and took it over. So how do you fight that? Education, let people know about these adversary and middle attacks. If you can, use phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication. Most multi-factor authentication, including push-based authentication, one-time passwords, are easily phishable. If you do have to use passwords, make sure you use long, complex passwords that are different for every website and service. Really, we think you should use a password manager. You should enable account lockout on any cloud sites that you have so people can't just guess in perpetuity. You may want to lock your logons to particular predefined IP addresses. Use digital certs. Digital certificate authentication is very, very popular today for cloud products, and I think everybody should look into that. Or you can use, some sort of, again, phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication device like, FIDO devices, YubiKeys, or something like that. And you should prevent and scan for hard-coded credentials. Make sure it doesn't end up in your developers or programmers' GitHub code. This is really what I recommend for most companies, is that you should use phishing-resistant MFA whenever you can to protect valuable data and systems. You should use a password manager to manage all the passwords after that, so you have really strong, complex passwords that are different for every website and service. And then if users must create passwords, they really should be creating passwords that are 20 characters or longer. Which no one wants to do. That's why you should use MFA and password managers instead. Another really common cloud security problem is overly permissive permissions. Very, very common, where someone will accidentally give everyone full control or public full control to like an Amazon data bucket or something like that. Whatever it is misconfiguration, allows too many people that have no authentication to access non-public data, almost always due to human error. Some of the biggest cloud compromises have been because of these overly permissive permissions. Here was one back in 2023 where the U.S. Department exposed internal U.S. military emails that have been open on the internet for the past 2 weeks. The exposed server was hosted on Microsoft's Azure government cloud. You think this is the security of the security of the security. Instead, this email server was accessible to anyone with public internet access, and you just had to know the IP address of the server, and you could download the 3 terabytes of internal military emails. Oops. But it's really, probably the more common scenarios where someone just has overly permissive permissions on their Amazon web service S3 storage bucket. Really, really common that someone misconfigures that. And it used to be, let me say, that the buckets by default had really overly permissive permissions, public permissions. That is no longer the default, but we still see people that are giving overly permissive permissions to their data buckets while they're trying to troubleshoot something, and then they forget to put the permissions back to what they should be. So your defenses, of course, are education, letting people know to do least privilege, and you don't want to do, overly permissive permissions. You should periodically, at least every 6 months to a year, audit and verify the permissions on all your cloud data buckets, and you want to have someone alert you if there's been unauthorized permission changes on your cloud data. You have to have good change and configuration control to be able to do that, so that people, aren't willy-nilly changing your cloud data security permissions. And again, if you can, you may want to lock logins to particular IP addresses or digital certificates, require VPNs and that sort of stuff. Or you can wrap your data in an encrypted container so that even if someone that's unauthorized downloads the data is encrypted and they can't get access to it. But this is a very, very common thing, overly permissive permissions. It happens in the real world and on-premises solutions, but happens in cloud products even more. So you definitely want to proactively look for and scan and audit and verify your cloud storage permissions. Unpatched software is still a really big problem. Again, unpatched software, according to Mandiant, last year in 2023, said that unpatched software causes 33% of successful attacks. So a third of your attacks are people not patching. It seems really common that everybody should just know you need to patch your software, but apparently it's a big problem because it's been that way for 3 decades. But patch your software. The LastPass hack, that's LastPass is a password manager. They've been hacked a couple of times, but at least once last year, one of the attacks were because of unpatched software. In this particular case, an attacker was able to log into a DevOps engineer's home computer, and then because it was unpatched, and then get access to the authentication credentials they needed to further hack LastPass. I always tell people you don't need to patch everything. What you need to patch for sure is anything that's on the CISA known exploited vulnerabilities catalog list. That catalog is a list of all real world software that's been used by a real world attacker to attack a real world target. Last year, there's over 25,000, over 29,000 vulnerabilities were announced in 2023, but only about 2 to 4% of them were ever used by any attacker against any real world target. And what tells you what software that is? CISA's known exploited vulnerability catalog. If you got software firmware on that list, you need to get it patched ASAP. Another really common target is application programming interfaces. Application programming interfaces usually, really, they just look like links, like a URL that a person or a computer to, and it's meant to allow things programmatically. You can have programmatic queries and data extractions, that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, APIs are commonly hacked by hackers and abused because they're not really well monitored. Sometimes they're not secured at all. Sometimes they're not monitored at all. Sometimes if maybe your regular website requires multi-factor authentication, the APIs almost never do. And so you need to make sure that if you have any application programming interfaces that you appropriately secure them. Here's an example in 2023, the mobile security T-Mobile attack in 2023 that resulted in the release of 37 million customer records. Was because of an insecure API, and the 2023 Honda API attack allowed an attacker to reset anyone's password that was in the cloud. So APIs, I think at times I read reports, there's been some out there, like an API was used something like 85% of the time when a company's passwords were stolen or guessed, it was because of their API. And ransomware often gains access through an insecure API. So, make sure you secure your APIs. Inventory your APIs. Some people don't know how many they have. Secure them. There's lots of guides out there, including the Cloud Security Alliance has guides on how to secure your API. There's entire companies, all they do to exist is tell you to secure your APIs. So monitor your APIs, secure them, and alert on anomalous behavior. So what are your defenses overall? Pay attention to the top cloud security hacks according to the Cloud Security Alliance, and of course the 5 that I showed you today. Pay attention to the most likely real-world attacks against your cloud sites and services. Not all things do you need to be worried about, but certainly the ones we've covered today. You want to be worried about social engineering. You want to make sure that you patch your software and your firmware. You want to make sure that you're using phishing resistant MFA whenever you can to protect valuable data and systems. You want to audit and verify and get rid of overly permissive permissions, and you want to secure your APIs. Anything you do to that end will be the best thing you can do. And because social engineering is still the #1 way that cloud services get successfully attacked, we certainly recommend that you train your users and how to spot phishing, how to mitigate it, and then how to appropriately report it so your IT teams know how to take care of it. You should do simulated phishing of your employees because that is the best education you can give them. And then people that need more training, people that failed the simulated phishing test should get more training. We know that doing security awareness training and simulated phishing is one of the best things you can do. Our average customer comes to us with about 33% of their employees that will answer and respond to any phish. And when they get through with our training and simulated phishing, it drops to about 5%. And that's an average among all companies that come to us. Our best companies are at around 1% or below 1%. So it can really have a huge improvement. But that said, I've run out of time. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at rogerg@knowbefore.com. You can follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter and some other social medias these days. But anyways, thanks for putting up with me, and continue to fight the good fight.
Always will fight the good fight, Roger. Now, didn't I tell you he was great? Always look forward to Roger being on, and enough of saying always. So, threw up the next poll question. You've seen it before, or something very much like it. Let us know what additional resources you'd like to see from Know Before. Now, we have run out of time for questions for Roger, which is a shame, but be assured that Know Before will follow up on all of them. I would also like to remind everyone about the handouts section. In there, you will find a link to a phishing security test webinar. Now, that sounds intriguing to me, so that is something you should check out right now. And it is also time for our next prize drawing. This time we are giving away an Amazon gift card and the first Kindle Scribe. So here we go, folks. The winner of the $300 Amazon gift card for this half hour is Saeed Mirzada from California. And the winner of that first beautiful tablet, that Kindle Scribe, is Melissa Smith from California. A couple of California winners there. Congrats to both of you. We will be in touch about claiming your prizes. And I'm going to close out this poll while we set up our next presentation, folks. Thank you for voting in that. And as you do in all of these polls, really appreciate that. Okay. Up next is HPE. That's a company you might be a little familiar with. And presenting for HPE is John Vitello, also known to his friends as JV. JV, you have the floor, good sir. Take it away.
Thanks, Keith. Let's get started. Digital transformation has become an imperative for every enterprise, and successful digital transformation requires data-first modernization. This demands a shift to data-centric mindset, understanding that data is the key driver of value creation and a key organizing principle for business success. But to accelerate their data-first hybrid cloud modernization, customers need to eliminate the management complexity, storage silos, scale-out limitations, and app disruptions across edge to cloud that slow them down. Just think about the headaches and complex operational experience that IT must deal with every day. Current on-prem storage offerings are difficult to manage and require specialized domain expertise for day two beyond operations. This impacts agility with IT tied up in routine tasks as opposed to higher value strategic initiatives, and it impedes the pace of innovation with complex procurement and provisioning slowing time to value for new apps and services. The typical enterprise has multiple storage platforms with unique hardware designs and diverse management experiences to support a specific data type, workload, or SLA. This results in significant operational challenges and cost efficiencies at scale. Legacy monolithic storage architectures or purpose-built appliances are unable to flexibly and cost-effectively scale out to keep pace with growing and unpredictable domains or demands of traditional, modern, and consolidated workloads. Budget constraints are forcing mid-sized customers and departments to settle for mid-range storage that compromises performance, availability, scalability, and management simplicity for price. App downtime and support escalations impacts IT's ability to meet SLAs, with endless time spent firefighting up and down the IT stack, managing disruptions and tuning infrastructure. Traditional modular storage arrays are usually built on a dual controller architecture with limited flexibility and resiliency. Traditional monolithic storage arrays provide a high degree of scalability and resiliency, but at the cost of expensive and proprietary architectures. So what are the capabilities desired by customers to solve that problem? Customers want to simplify operations and move faster with a cloud operational experience everywhere, enabling them to deploy new apps and services quickly and easily, not just in the public cloud, but on-prem. Customers are looking to increase agility and lower TCO by unifying multiple mission-critical workloads and use cases on one storage infrastructure with one management experience. Customers are seeking to maximize infrastructure efficiency and cost savings at scale with the ability to configure a storage system that meets the specific capacity and performance requirement of their current workloads and lets them non-disruptively upgrade resources as needed. Data-first organizations want to eliminate the trade-offs that require them to sacrifice critical capabilities such as performance, availability, and scalability for price. They need to remove the anxiety and disruption of unexpected app downtime and data loss with affordable, always available storage infrastructure and simple hybrid cloud data protection. To truly modernize today, our customers need more than a faster, more powerful box. They need to break away from legacy infrastructure and elevate their storage experience with a platform that unlocks agility by delivering the cloud experience everywhere, maximizes infrastructure efficiency at scale, ensures apps are always on and always fast, and eliminates price performance compromises. This is where HPE GreenLake for block storage with Alletra Storage MP comes in. HPE GreenLake for block storage is delivering mission-critical storage at mid-range economics with the industry's first disaggregated scale-out block storage with 100% data availability. Built on new HPE Alletra Storage MP modular, disaggregated storage, and delivered and managed via the HPE GreenLake Cloud platform, this enhanced cloud data service brings the cloud experience, efficient scale, and extreme resiliency and performance to your mission-critical apps. From large databases to modern cloud-native apps to consolidated mixed workloads at an affordable mid-range price point. Customers can transform faster by accelerating three key outcomes: simplify management with the cloud operational experience, better performance, better economics with disaggregated scale-out storage, and reduce risk by running any app without compromise with the 100% data available guarantee. HPE GreenLake for block storage built on HPE Alletra Storage MP represents the first foundational step on a multi-year journey to consolidate and simplify our HPE block storage portfolio onto a common software and hardware stack for block storage with the unified cloud management experience through HPE GreenLake Cloud Platform. Due to its robust set of storage capabilities, as well as the architectural ability to scale from entry to enterprise, HPE GreenLake for block storage built on HPE Alletra Storage MP provides a great opportunity to play in multiple customer segments, use cases, and price bands. HPE Alletra Storage MP is a new modular, disaggregated, multi-protocol storage architecture that will be the common simplified platform for all HPE storage and data services moving forward. It consists of standardized composable building blocks that can support and/or be repurposed for different software-defined storage personas and use cases, including block and file. This enables customers to deploy HPE GreenLake for block storage or HPE GreenLake for file storage on a common hardware platform through the HPE GreenLake Cloud platform, collapsing silos and improving TCO ROI. The majority of disaggregated hardware, and especially the modular disaggregated hardware infrastructure, empowers customers to scale capacity and performance independently and non-disruptively, starting small and scaling big for greater efficiency and lower costs. And it's worth emphasizing that a common underlying hardware platform for storage is no small feat. In fact, it represents something unique in the storage industry. No longer do you have to buy a different box or a different kind of system for the scale of workload, SLA, or storage protocol that you're running. When designing the standardized HPE Alletra Storage NP platform, we wanted to ensure it would be suitable for multiple kinds of applications now and in the future. That means running block, file, and in the future, object workloads at any scale using the exact same set of building blocks. And that's powerful, particularly in the context of simplifying data management. Unlike traditional storage management common with other on-prem storage solutions, HPE GreenLake for block storage reduces on-premise storage complexity and frees you to simplify operations and move faster with the speed and agility of a cloud operational experience everywhere. By leveraging industry-leading AI ops, HPE GreenLake for block storage makes underlying data infrastructure invisible while shifting operations to be app, not infrastructure-centric. Powered by the HPE GreenLake Cloud platform, customers can deploy quickly, provision in minutes, and manage everything from a single cloud console. We start with streamlined device deployment. Simply rack the infrastructure, plug in the power cords, and connect the network cables. In a few clicks, the new system is configured and available in your fleet, ready to serve data for application workloads. Next, we have intent-based provisioning. Customers can shift from LUN-centric to AI-driven app-centric storage provisioning. No storage domain expertise is required and no more guesswork. Storage provisioning time is slashed from days or weeks to minutes, and line of business owners and app admins are empowered to self-provision storage to accelerate app deployment, freeing up IT resources to work on strategic, higher value initiatives. We then move to invisible upgrades. Thanks to a SaaS-based delivery, new data services instantly become available to you. Data plane software upgrades are non-disruptive and intelligently matched to a given system. And finally, global unified management, enabling you to manage and monitor geo-distributed systems across edge to cloud from a single web interface through HPE GreenLake. So managing hundreds of systems is as simple as managing one. Everything you need to manage your fleet of data infrastructure is at your fingertips with an intuitive, SaaS-based user experience, accessible from anywhere and from any device. It's time to forget the anxiety and disruption of unexpected downtime. HPE GreenLake for block storage is an always-on service that is built on an AI-driven, disaggregated, no single point of failure platform to guarantee resilient 100% data availability for your mission-critical apps. And you can meet any recovery point objective and recovery time objective strategy with transparent business continuity and automatic failover across multiple sites, as well as getting simple and efficient hybrid cloud data protection for on-prem and cloud-native workloads. And it's always fast. HPE GreenLake for block storage accelerates time to insight with extreme speed and responsiveness for your most latency-driven, modern, traditional, and consolidated mixed workloads. Its all-active architecture and massively parallel design mean data can seamlessly and simultaneously access all controllers and ports. All your physical components are active, and nothing is in standby mode. This ensures consistent, predictable performance and ultra-low latency at scale. And with an architecture optimized for all NVMe, HPE GreenLake for block storage is ideally suited for your most demanding mixed workloads. Empowering this always-on, always-fast storage is the industry's most advanced AI for infrastructure. Why is that important? Because AI-powered autonomous operations mean your organization can say goodbye to endless firefighting. With an AI-managed service, you can predict and prevent disruptions before they occur across the stack, pinpoint issues between storage and VMs, and identify underutilized virtual resources. Your admins can rely on AI-driven recommendations to take the guesswork out of managing data infrastructure, and you can eliminate time-consuming escalations through predictive support automation and direct access to experts. Moving to HPE GreenLake for block storage built on HPE ElectraStorage MP can accelerate outcomes for our customers. You can get 66% better performance and 2.3x faster read performance compared to previous generations. The increasing amount of data today has the potential to usher in new experiences and outcomes while driving a generational shift in the application landscape. To bring new ideas to market faster and respond sooner to customer demands, organizations are turning more to the modern applications. Since traditional applications will not give way overnight, IT has never had it more difficult and more complex deploying and maintaining double the infrastructure. HPE GreenLake for block storage is designed to power modern, traditional, and consolidated mixed workloads that power digital transformation with extreme availability and performance requirements. The increasing amount of data today has the potential to usher in new experiences and outcomes while driving a generational shift in the application landscape. To bring new ideas to market faster and respond sooner to customer demands, organizations are turning to more modern applications, such as containers and NoSQL databases. Since traditional applications such as virtualization databases and ERP will not give way overnight, IT has never had it more difficult and more complex deploying and maintaining double the infrastructure. HPE GreenLake for block storage is designed to power modern, traditional, and consolidated mixed workloads that power the digital transformation with extreme availability and performance requirements. And with that, Keith, do we have any Q&A, or would we like to answer a couple questions from our audience?
We sure do, JV. Thank you for that great overview. Now, while we get your questions ready to answer, I'm going to put up our next poll question. Let us know what additional resources you would like to see from HPE. All right, JV, you ready to go, sir? Oh, let's try that again. JV, are you there and ready to go?
Yes.
All
yes,
right.
sir, I'm ready to go.
There you are. Glad to hear it. All right, why don't we get to those questions? All right, first one. Now, you had mentioned several times Electra in there. So does Electra MP provide mission critical availability?
Yes, in fact, Electra MP has a 100% availability guarantee for our customers. Always up, always available.
A 100% guarantee. I wonder if that makes anyone else pretty excited. 100% is that's a hard number to reach, but HPE is very confident in that, isn't it?
Yes, we're talking more than 6 nines here. We're talking about a block infrastructure that is always available, always ready with non-disruptive upgrades. It's a new approach. It's the best way we could modernize our architecture. And by disaggregating our architecture, not only is the performance there, but the redundancy is there. So we are definitely very pleased with our Electra MP offering.
Outstanding. Okay, next question for you. How many controller nodes does Electra MP support?
Most storage units only require or use 2 nodes. We can actually run with 2 nodes, 4 nodes, and even down the road, we'll have more nodes. So when we talk about, the ability to drive performance or redundancy, imagine being able to have 4 nodes always active, always on at all times. It just smokes the competition. It's the most reliable and, performant hardware mechanism we've made. And when we combine it with GreenLake and all the different management features, it's just a real robust system that we're very excited to talk about.
And definitely provides a lot of peace of mind to all the admins out there. Very, very important. So Brandon just asked a question, and he wants to know, how can the HPE solutions help me with my hybrid server infrastructure? What do you say to Brandon?
Well, it's kind of neat because if you're running hybrid servers, you have the ability to run your workload in the cloud, in your data center, in your colo. Not only can Electra MP run in your data center, but you can actually run it in your colo, and you can run active implementations of Electra MP as well. So wherever your workload is, you can usually reach Electra MP, and you can protect it from either site if you're talking multiple sites. So that's kind of a breakthrough in the block architecture, where we used to have to be totally limited by distance or limited by geography. With our new topologies and technology, we're able to handle anything from your hybrid requirements moving forward.
I love that. Kind of location agnostic, isn't it? Right?
It is.
That's something the marketing team needs to pick up on. I won't charge them if they use that, but it is nice, like you say, that it can be anywhere you are, right? So that is great stuff. Okay. Let's see. I think we have got time for a couple more here. Chad wants to know, how does HPE leverage security analytics and threat intelligence to proactively identify and mitigate security risks?
Well, we've always had InfoSight and a type of AI that we use internally. And we like to say that, we can solve for one, solve for many, because with our AI analytics, we can see a problem. And then once we identify it, we can look for other architectures within our environment that are similar, and we can proactively notify that customer. So when we see different things going on, with workloads, with architectures, a lot of times you don't know what's happening until it's too late. And when we're talking about our type of AI intelligence, we're able to identify that security issue, and once we do, we can fix it everywhere across multiple platforms for our customers.
Okay, awesome. All right, I think we have time for one more question today for you, JV, and it is this one. Does it matter what block storage I'm currently using?
It does not. We can migrate, mainstream storage arrays right to Electra MP via online import utility. We can use HPE Zerto if you're virtualized, and HPE pair motion from 3-power Primera and Electra 9000 arrays. So basically, we can migrate you any way you require within your infrastructure, and we can also offer you HPE data migration services if desired.
Outstanding. So I'm full of marketing slogans today. I might call that BYOB, right? Bring your own block. So how about that? Does that work for you? All right. So that is fantastic information, JV. I appreciate you being on so much and for giving us that overview of Electra and GreenLake and what people can do with it. So much good information there. It was a delight to have you on today.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. And I want to remind everyone that we've got that poll question up right now still for additional information about the HPE solution. And I want to remind everybody that there is a handout from HPE also available in that handouts tab right next to the questions tab. It is a PDF that goes over a dozen reasons to choose HPE GreenLake. Be sure to check that out for more details. And it is now time for our next prize drawing. We got another $300 Amazon gift card ready to go. And the winner of that one is Parag Dave from West Virginia. Congratulations, Parag. Sit tight and you'll be hearing from us about getting you your gift card. Okay, we've got Veeam up next, everyone, in the MegaCast, and Kirsten Stoner is presenting for Veeam. I will be joining Kirsten at the end of her presentation for some Q&A, so remember to keep those questions coming. Kirsten, you now have the floor.
Thanks, Keith. Hi, everyone. My name is Kirsten Stoner. I am a product strategy technologist at Veeam Software. Today, I'm here to talk to you about some of the best practices for secure hybrid and multi-cloud backup. Security is top of mind for every IT pro and decision maker today. And during my session, I'm going to discuss some of the best practices for security and protection of your hybrid and multi-cloud environment. Most organizations today operate on a combination of on-premise and cloud workloads known as the hybrid cloud. This is ideal for most organizations because it's not always possible to move everything to the cloud. This could be for reasons like cost, performance, or compliance. However, even with some of the workloads and all the benefits that the clouds have to offer, still for most companies, it's only going to be a matter of time before they experience a cyber attack. So really their ability to resist will depend on the steps they take to harden and protect their networks today. It is equally as important to have a secure backup as a last line of defense in the fight against ransomware. I first wanted to talk about some of the importance of prevention. So prevention is an essential part of any hybrid cloud security strategy, and it's going to help mitigate the risk of data loss because of the security threats like ransomware. Having the proper defense can help prevent an attack from happening, or at least be able to quickly mitigate an attack so you experience less data loss. Now you might be thinking, well, I operate some of my machines in the cloud. Isn't it protected? Well, cloud service providers are contractually obligated to protect their systems against an intrusion and an attack in accordance with their own shared responsibility models. However, that doesn't extend to your data or how you set up your network. That's going to be your responsibility. So some important steps that we can take to harden our systems today would be listed here on this slide. So first is, maintaining software patches, making sure all software and firmware is up to date and you're applying security patches as they are released. Next, you want to think about the system configuration. So making sure you're avoiding security gaps and vulnerabilities caused by any type of configuration error within your network instances or your virtual machines. Keep in mind network segregation. So making sure that you're segregating your network into multiple partitions or domains. Access control, adopting that least privilege access control. So making sure that the people in your organization only have access to the data that they need to have access to. And then lastly, monitoring. So continuously monitoring your networks for unusual CPU or network traffic can really help maintain that importance of prevention. So even with the best ransomware defenses, bad actors get through as attack vectors evolve and become more sophisticated. Hackers are looking at every opportunity to breach defenses. So phishing attacks, tricking unsuspecting employees, drive-by malware attacks from infected sites, and scanning systems for vulnerabilities such as unpatched software and account compromise. They just need to find one vulnerability to infect your system. So having a secure backup in place is going to make sure that you're maintaining that integrity of data and you have a clean recovery. So here are some best practices for secure cloud and backup recovery. The first is to follow the 3-2-1 rule. Now this might be familiar to you already, but this is really going to give you the ability to have, multiple copies of your backup on two different medias, one which is offsite. So like I mentioned before, cloud providers are responsible for backing up your data. That's going to be your responsibility. So it's important that you are following, the backup best practices for your organization. Air gap your backups. So you might be thinking, how do you achieve an air gap in the cloud when it's constantly connected to the network? And this is really where we want to consider setting some security boundaries between backup resources and production. It's been advised to utilize a dedicated account, subscription, or project for your backups. So making sure that you're using those separations between production and backup is really going to help. You also want to make sure that you're creating a backup copy and storing it elsewhere, whether that be on-premises storage, maybe a hardened Linux repository using single-use credentials, or immutable object storage. Next, we want to think about the principle of least privilege, limiting privileges to those required for each user, system, and application to perform their specific function. This could include things like identity and access management, role-based access controls, and multi-factor authentication. Each of these are really going to help you make sure that you're protecting your data. You aren't, if one of the credentials is compromised, that they, don't have access to the entire infrastructure, and that it's really they only have access to a small amount of the infrastructure just due to that principle of least privilege. Next, we have immutability. Immutability is going to allow you to ensure that your data is being safe from being changed. It can't be modified, deleted, or overrated. So this is going to help ensure that your data is not corrupted or encrypted by an attacker, helping you keep a clean backup that you're able to restore from. And then I have encryption on this slide. And encryption is very important because it's going to provide another layer of protecting your data and staying cyber resilient. We don't want to forget about monitoring and incident response. It's going to be crucial to continuously monitor your systems for signs of ransomware, as well as having detailed plans outlining the actions that need to be taken in the event an attack happens. Monitoring can help identify unusual activity and abnormal network behavior that may indicate malicious activities. I did mention monitoring a little bit earlier within this presentation, But monitoring is very useful because it's going to allow you to set a baseline of how your machines normally act so that you're really going to be able to easily identify that unusual and abnormal activity. Next, you're going to think about, security software that can help detect and eliminate threats. This includes things like phishing, malware, ransomware, zero-day exploits. Using, an AI-enabled detection engine is really going to help block suspicious processes and activities. Preparing an incident response plan. This is going to make sure that you have a plan in place when that attack happens, because it's not a matter of if, but more so a matter of when. And having an incident response plan is going to be very important. And you're going to want to include things like specific personnel that are, in charge of performing this incident response plan, any type of stakeholders that are in your organization that, have a stake in recovering that data and getting the business back up online. And it's also going to include actions in response to the attack. So maybe it includes isolating the virtual machine or the machine from the network, or maybe you just want to contain that machine while you do other processes on the machine, run other scans, or maybe you want to remove that machine on purpose, or termination, different things like that. So really making sure that you're prepared for when that attack happens is going to be really helpful. Next, we want to think about automation. So automation is going to help with remediation, detecting, blocking, and isolating endpoints, systems, and software. We also want to think about forensic analysis. So a lot of the times when we get attacked, that attack and the trails of that attack are going to be included in system logs. So being able to access these system logs so that it's possible to determine the sequence of events, and you can help identify that type of malware. This can also be really useful when you think about the IT community and sharing experiences within the community about, ransomware attacks as well. We hear a lot about, Yara rules and looking for specific file extensions, signatures. So if you're going through your forensic analysis and you see within that, certain file extensions, signatures, you can say, okay, this is this type of ransomware. And then you can also let the community know, hey, this is the type of ransomware that's out there. And they can also start looking for it within their networks. Lastly, you want to make sure that you're training your team as well so they know and understand what you do. The worst case scenario would be, not only are you hit with a ransomware attack, but your team doesn't know what to do. So just having a plan in place, making sure you're running through that plan and training your team is really going to help when it comes to mitigating and remediating a ransomware attack. So Veeam's approach to ransomware. And Veeam takes a multi-layered approach to ransomware, and it includes these 5 layers. So the first is going to be able to recover from a backup. A lot of the times when you're hit with ransomware, the first thing you do to get your data back is to recover from a backup, right? This is where your copies of your data reside. And Veeam has many different recovery options available to you to get your business back running as fast as possible. Next, we want to think about multi-layered immutability. Immutability is a great technology that's going to allow you to lock your data for a certain specific amount of time from being changed, altered, or deleted. When we talk about multi-layered availability, you might be thinking AWS Object Lock, Azure Blob, immutability, and some of these public cloud offerings. But Veeam really allows you to utilize what these public cloud offerings have to offer when it comes to immutability, but also utilizing, a Linux box that has single-use credentials if you would like to, or you can use multi-cloud immutability options. So really giving you a agnostic approach to how you want to set up immutability in your environment and making sure that you have multiple layers of that and you have multiple copies of your data that's protected. Next, we're going to want to think about data mobility. So if your production environment goes down, you're going to want to be able to restore where you need to restore. Whether it be to a different platform or maybe cross-platform. You want to make sure that you have those different options to restore from, right? So if you have half your environment on premises, half of your environment in AWS or Azure, and your on-premises environment gets attacked with ransomware, you might not want to restore back on premises, right? So being able to restore to AWS or Azure so you can get those machines back up and running, so you can get your customers back on their websites, get your employees back working, is going to be very useful in the sense of a disaster. Then we want to make sure that we're monitoring, right? So having a tool that's going to look for that suspicious activity and malicious behavior. Lastly, automation. Automation helps eliminate human error, and it makes it easy to ensure all your data is protected and restorable. And Veeam does this through the Veeam data platform. Backup and recovery is critical, and it's really a lot of the times is what Veeam is known for, right? But it's just not enough anymore. To effectively be able to respond to the threats of cyber attacks, we need advanced capabilities to monitor and measure protection while being able to automate and orchestrate data recovery. This is really going to help maintain and achieve cyber resilience. So Veeam provides organizations with data resiliency through secure backup and fast, reliable recovery solutions for the hybrid cloud. We integrate with AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, and we offer native backup and application mobility for Kubernetes. Additionally, you can protect Microsoft 365 and Salesforce data to get the recovery flexibility you need. Now, if you want to get smarter about your company's data resilience strategy, we want to make sure we can help you get there. And now it's time to have some Q&A and questions from the audience. Thank you.
Hi, Kirsten. Thank you so much for that presentation, that overview of what Veeam is doing. That is just great stuff and so important these days when attacks are coming from everywhere. Ransomware continues to always be on the rise, it seems, doesn't it? So knowing how to respond and react and prevent it, all of these things are so crucial for environments these days. And you're right, we do have some great questions coming in. So why don't we get to some of those now? First one we have got for you today. What are some things we can do to protect our backup environment from cyber threats?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so what I would say is making sure the first step is really making sure that you're using, logical separate accounts, and making sure that your backup environment is separate from your production environment. It's really going to help out. As you've seen, a lot of these ransomware attacks are looking at the backup infrastructure and trying to get that backup data. So it's going to make it harder for you to recover and easier for you to need to pay that ransom. So the first thing is, making sure that you're separating your environments. You're using that rule of least privilege. Maybe you're also implementing immutability in your backups. So setting that immutable time frame. And we also want to make sure that we're following that 3-2-1 rule. And we can even take it a further step and call it the 3-2-1-1-0 rule, which basically adds on the immutable backup copy. So using, that object lock or utilizing immutability in Azure, and then having one copy of data that's offline and air gapped. So making sure that you have a copy, maybe just turned off at a different site in a different cloud, so that you're able to recover from that.
I like the idea a lot of extending the 3-2-1 rule and making things even safer. Because you're right, the 3-2-1's been around a long time, and this makes it even safer. And I think it is good to evolve it, to where it is offers even more protection, because the bad guys are better than ever at getting to your stuff. That is great to hear. Yeah. So a second question for you, Kirsten. Does Veeam have any tools or resources that can help us with identifying missing best practices or security changes we can make in our environment?
Yeah, so within Veeam backup and replication, the Veeam data platform, right, we actually have a best security and best practices analyzer built into our tool. And basically, what you do is you run this analyzer, and it's going to take a look at your environment, if it's following security best practices, and also take a look at your product configuration and making sure that you've configured the product correctly. This is going to be a great tool because after that's done analyzing your environment, it's basically going to give you a list of recommendations of ways that you can improve. And this is just based on industry standard best practices. And so you can then say, okay, so this is my environment. This is my score of my environment. For some reason, I didn't implement these strategies. I didn't, set up the configuration properly, and then go back and reconfigure and make sure you're following those best practices, right? So it's going to help really make sure that you're hardening your backup infrastructure so that you can prevent as best as you can ransomware getting into your environment.
I love that idea of the analysis and then telling you based on its analysis what best practices you maybe need to implement, where you're falling short, and which ones you're already following. Because just a list, you have to go kind of through everyone, and you may or may not be sure if these best practices are being implemented or not. So I really like the idea that Veeam helps you out, with doing that. That is really nice to hear. Okay, I think we have time for one more question here today, and it is this. You've talked about immutability a good bit today, Kirsten. So, does Veeam have immutability built in by default? Someone wants to know.
Yeah, so Veeam really leverages our storage partners to utilize immutability. So we have a program, it's called the Veeam Ready program, where our partners can go and basically they go through a qualification process that's basically just making sure that their setup is, the best setup for, Veeam processes, what we require for performance and things like that. So within that list, there's a ton of different object storage providers like AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, Wasabi, Object First, and that basically lets our customers and lets them know that these object storage providers have, are qualified to work very well with Veeam, and we use that immutability that they provide. So, normally, if you've ever set up immutability on AWS before, you have to go into the bucket and check a little box. But then, after you've checked that box within Veeam, there is going to be another, like a little step there, just saying, hey, I want to send this to my immutable backup repository. My immutability time frame is this. So we work hand in hand with the storage and also within our product itself. So yes, we do have immutability.
That's great. And it's also nice to hear, just by the way, that you work basically with all the big vendors too. So you're essentially vendor agnostic. So whatever customers come in with, Veeam works with, and that's going to be music to their ears, when they go with Veeam. So Kirsten, this has been a real delight to see how Veeam can protect our precious data from all of these threats that are out there today. I want to thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay. Time for another poll question. I really enjoyed going over some of those questions with Kirsten. And now it's your turn to let Veeam know what you'd like to see from them next, what additional information you want from their solution. They are always ready to talk to you. And while you vote, you should check out Veeam's handout. It's a PDF featuring hybrid cloud customer success stories. Who doesn't love a good case study, I know I do. So download that now. And while you're grabbing that PDF, let me give away another gift card and another Kindle Scribe. The gift card winner for this segment is Ali Bellassine from California. And the second Kindle Scribe goes to Jason Gonzalez from Virginia. Congratulations to you both, and sit tight. You will be hearing from us soon about getting you those prizes. You have another few seconds to vote on Veeam here in this poll before we move on to our penultimate presentation. Yes, I used that word. I love big vocabulary words. Our penultimate presentation comes from Rubrik. And presenting for Rubrik today is sales engineer Brandon Allman. Brandon is ready to go now, I hear, so I am going to turn things over to him. Brandon, you are up.
Great, I appreciate it. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I had a little audio trouble to start out, so everything should be back to normal. So what we're going to be talking about today is backup does not equal cyber resilience. This is kind of a new paradigm in what we're dealing with in our cyber realm. And so I'm going to cover pretty broadly what kind of backups look like and how they impact your environment. So let's just kick it right off with my content slide. So really the question we're asking our customers is, can you recover from a cyber attack within 24 hours? This is a very important question because largely if it's beyond 24 hours, you start to get into those things where the news starts to notice, your customers start to notice, lots of things start to happen. The financial impact starts to become pretty extreme. In-day recoveries, you can usually keep a lot of that business from being too impactful, but after 24 hours, it starts to get pretty extreme. So when you look at the ecosystem of what you have in your data center, you've got all of these things. So you've got your perimeter, your network, your endpoints, all of these things, but the backup is really a last piece. And backup and DR are historically something that has been there to recover from lost files, somebody's deleted something, we've got corrupt, small pieces, but in a disaster, in a cybersecurity event, it's a completely different scenario. Most likely all of these pieces are going to be compromised, your perimeter down through your apps and data, and your last resort is going to be that backup. So can you recover in 24 hours with Rubrik? The answer is yes, and we're going to describe the difference between how we bring that timeline down to that 24-hour mark. We start that out by doing consolidation of your backup silos, and this reduces risk. Largely what we're dealing with is a transition to that hybrid model. We're talking cloud today, we're talking endpoints today. We have things across multiple workloads, and we need to really manage those centrally. And so we'll start out with that kind of basic, what we're all dealing with, that physical stack that lives in your data center, the VMs, the databases, things that are your traditional data centers. But we're adding on a lot more things here. So now we have a large workload, so NAS pieces that can get up into the petabyte scale that don't traditionally make sense using a standard backup. So they wind up getting pushed to the cloud or pushing to different locations. So we're starting to see how we could easily silo our data protection, our cybersecurity recovery methodology by already having two silos. But now, and COVID really pushed this forward, that transition to 365 to those SaaS offerings, those cloud pieces that are managed. So now we've got three silos, and then to add it all off, those cloud traditional things, cloud native workloads, things that were running in the cloud. And most of our customers are dealing with all of these. And the legacy backups were keeping these into individual silos. Well, with the Rubrik product, we have introduced the Rubrik Security Cloud. It is truly a single interface management console. It's not going to pop out a separate HTML5 that actually is going to a different management. This type of consolidation reduces management overhead by up to 90%. And it's a big deal when you're talking about operational efficiencies, but also in reducing that risk from a cyber attack, because a lot of what you deal with in these instances is that disparate nature of all of the pieces that you're protecting. And since they're not all the same, those are when the mistakes are made, and that's how the bad actors are able to exploit your infrastructure. So by consolidating everything into a single management interface, which includes cloud workloads, it includes those on-prem, we're able to provide those efficiencies, which gives you things like role-based access control in a central location, MFA in a central location. I'm not having to secure down multiple instances of a product or multiple components of a product with different controls. I can do it all in a central nature. And so how do we do it here at Rubrik? We start out with that single pane of glass, all of that MFA, And then we layer that on to give you that cyber resilience, which is beyond just backup. And so we're going to start with a Rubrik Data Vault. On-prem, we're going to have you an isolated, immutable copy of your data. Now, why do we do an on-prem? I know there's a lot of transition to cloud. We start with the on-prem because of the need to ensure that we have a quick recoverable copy. When we're talking about multi-terabytes of scale and needing to recover those all in a single day, the ability to recover those from cloud isn't always capable when we're talking about these large scales. So having a true immutable copy on-prem next to your infrastructure, we're going to provide those RPO and RTOs that are required for your business to recover. The next thing we do is we add on things like the ability to send copies out to other sources. So we keep that operational copy local, and now we can stream out copies to multiple clouds. We can send it to a cloud that you manage. Some of the mechanisms we're dealing with is what kind of cloud. We can use object store. That includes things like our cloud copies. So if you look across the stack, we can directly send the Rubrik Data Vault copies out to clouds. We can actually send our NAS directly to cloud. But we're also able to leverage things in O365 and SharePoint and move them to other cloud infrastructures that are managed by Rubrik. So we're defeating some of those problems with tenant takeovers and that shared responsibility model with Microsoft to ensure that your data is protected properly. And then finally, some of the new modern workloads like ECS, RDS, those cloud VMs that are a little bit more difficult to protect, we're doing those differently. We're actually leveraging a streaming backup. We're not spinning up the traditional versions of our software that require compute. We're actually just streaming them directly to an object store, which increases efficiencies and also gives you the ability to manage that cost profile a lot better because you're not dealing with that compute and RAM. On top of that, we improve the performance of the traditional backups that are part of the native hyperscalers by giving you the ability to move across tenants and across accounts. So as your footprint grows in those cloud infrastructures, you're able to leverage them, and the Rubrik just becomes more important of a product line in that cloud infrastructure. So we'll have questions at the end. Normally, I would stop here and talk about how this matters in your infrastructure, but we'll save all of our questions for the end. But this is how Rubrik takes that traditional legacy backup, consolidates it into one product, and makes it flexible so that you're managing your data and not having disparate clouds and disparate locations. We're centralizing all of that control for your data protection. So let's start with the core of our product. We start out with the Rubrik Data Vault. You may already have some of this infrastructure in place that looks similar, but the differentiator here is how we put that together. So our product is a physical appliance. It's a converged backup, dedupe, storage, and vault all in one. It's separate from your VMware infrastructure so that there's no issue with your VMware going down and us not being able to do recoveries. So that's incredibly important that it's separate from your VM infrastructure. So like I mentioned, we're physically isolated, so we're survivable from that attack. So there's nothing in the hypervisor that we're going to have to deal with. So one of the traditional problems we're dealing with now is the transition from the guest attacks into the VMware attacks. They're actually starting to penetrate the hypervisors and do their damage there. And if you're leveraging the hypervisor for some of your data protection infrastructure, proxies, or software running on a VM, you're probably going to have to do recoveries of that catalog, of that VM, before you even do recoveries of your data. And that can add on hours, if not days, to your recovery process because you have to build out your recovery infrastructure before you can start to recover. We are built on a hardened Linux repository, which means no Windows. Almost 100% of the time, if your environment is compromised, everything that's Windows is compromised. What that means is no downtime. That hardened Linux kernel is a customized kernel so that you are ensuring that you're able to recover. So we're separate from your infrastructure with all that MFA, that role-based access, and the isolation from your VMware infrastructure, your Hyper-V infrastructure, whatever hypervisor you're using. We will be separate, and so we'll ensure that that recovery infrastructure is up and running the minute you need it. So we're also a scale-out architecture. We're not that traditional small head add-on storage, which can be problematic when you get to large scales. We have multiple node architecture, so which means as you grow, your capabilities grow with you. That means the bigger your infrastructure gets, the more streams you can do, the more backups you can do. It also is masterless. We're node based, so that's rolling upgrades. That's no impact during upgrades, so no downtime to do upgrades. You're only as strong as your last upgrade when we're dealing with these infrastructures that have constant security patches. So we're very, very powerful in that terms. Everything we do is encrypted by default. It's not something you can turn off in our infrastructure. And that's a pretty powerful thing. A lot of the products out there do have encryption, but they are something that can be turned on and off. If you can turn it off, bad actors can probably turn it off as well. So we've decided that things like MFA and encryption are just on by default. Can't turn them off. That ensures that if your infrastructure is compromised, that we're still able to give you that recovery capabilities. We are air gapped, so our OS shell storage is not accessible from the network. So there's no NFS, there's no SMB. We use a data broker movement, so you can't even see the file system if you have full admin rights to the operating system. And that's pretty important. One of the number one ways that infrastructure is attacked is the backups are attacked first, and they're looking for those traditional protocols, and they're looking to exploit those maybe through a 0-day or an unpatched vulnerability. And then once those backups are compromised, they hit your production infrastructure. So that air gap on our first copy not only ensures your backups are recoverable right next to your infrastructure, but it reduces your cost of ownership because you don't have to have 3-4 copies of your data to ensure a cyber recovery. As I mentioned before, we are immutable. We are 100% of backups cannot be modified or encrypted, and this is largely due to that hardened Linux that's custom. We are an append-only file system, so we do not allow modifications of existing backups. So that's pretty powerful in terms of ensuring that the data is going to be exactly what it's supposed to be when you recover. You can't even get in and encrypt our data in our box. It's already encrypted, and that feature, since it's append only, will not allow you to do a double encryption event. We are secured by default. We follow that zero trust model. So we have mandatory MFA. We have local users with time-based one-time passwords where you, for your break glass issue where you need to get into the rubric and shut everything down, you can scan a QR code. It brings up that one-time security. And then retention lock with NTP protection. So there is an attack out there where NTP can be poisoned. We follow a monotonic clock so that we are ensuring that everything that we do is assuming a breach and that we don't trust anybody but ourselves. And that allows us to make sure your backups are completely capable to be recovered. And then really that's all of the things we've talked about is really about data protection in the kind of classic sense from a recovery perspective. We do it a little bit better. We ensure they're there. This is the cyber resiliency. But now the next generation is how do I find out how to do those recoveries? So we do have built-in scanners. They're on the box. It's not a third party. It's not something you have to add on. These built-in scanners ensure that your first copy is scanned. And then as we scale out that box, we scale out performance. This drastically reduces your RPO and RTO because we can tell you exactly where the penetration were and where the recovery points are. So when you're looking at the blast radius, you can come to rubric, especially when your primary infrastructure may not be accessible. You may have endpoint monitors, you may have some things that are all incredibly important, but if you're going through a significant breach, they may not be available. The fact that we're going to provide some of that infrastructure capability built into our product, including the scanners, is going to give you a power that's going to reduce that RPO and RTO significantly based on some of the historical capabilities that we would have to do, the recover the VM, to scan it. Is it good or bad? Oh, it's not. I have to go back in time. So we're going to do all that on box. You don't have to inflate the copy. You don't have to undedupe it or anything like that. It's built into the Data Vault architecture. So this is going to ensure you have those recoveries. So that is our architecture. That's that Data Vault cluster. So when you have the bad day, we're going to recover in hours, not days. So how do we do it? So we do it with that air gap. We do it by locking the file system. 100% recoverable RTO in less than 24 hours. So that's pretty powerful. So why the backup isn't cyber resilience? And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. I know that there's I'm saying a lot, but I want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A. And so what we see, this is the anatomy of an attack. This is how we've deconstructed what's going on. So they get access to your data. Mandiant's recent publication is saying they're in dwell time about 5 days. It's reduced from about 200. This has a lot to do with how we're better at our tooling and everybody's better at scanning. So they have to be a little bit faster on their attack. But maybe they're not just looking to encrypt. Maybe they're looking for data exfiltration. So knowing what your data looks like and what your personally identifiable information looks like is more important than ever. So they're not just encrypting data and sending you a Bitcoin address to send them money. They're actually going to say, hey, we stole a bunch of credit cards with social security numbers, and if you don't pay us money, we're going to send it off to the dark web. And then, of course, you have to pay AG fees and things like that. And so that is part of the problem. And so in most attacks, once they trigger it off, they've been in there 5 days, they've stolen a bunch of your important data. They'll do a VM level attack, which means not the guest at the VM within the hypervisor. And usually within 5 hours, 60% of your infrastructure is encrypted. So these happen fast. And a lot of times before you know it, you're 60% done and you're in a bad way. And so everything's down. So the clock matters. So those ability to recover quickly is incredibly important. So your business cost is increasing because they're getting in there, they're encrypting quickly. So you need to know what, when, where, and how they are impacting your environment. So that's where Rubrik comes to the rescue. So we ask these questions. Is your infrastructure 100% immutable? We are at Rubrik. That's important to ask. How do you know what was encrypted if you don't have your production infrastructure up and running? So if I can't look at anything and my VMware host is down, I don't know what is and what isn't. So the ability to look in the Rubrik product and see that is pretty important. What was stolen? So that's the sensitive data. On the first pass, what was at risk? We can provide information on what they had access to so that you know what your risk level in that blast radius is. And then when to recover to. What time in the past do I need to use for my recovery point? If my infrastructure is completely down and my backups are compromised, or they encrypted my backups, or I have to rebuild my catalog, that might take hours. We're going to give you that in minutes with that scanning tool that's built in. And then how long will it take? That goes partly to that recovering your backup infrastructure. If you have to recover your catalog, recover your backup VMs before you can actually start recovering your data, that may double or triple the time to get your recoveries up and running. So that's largely why backup is not equal to cyber resiliency. We do all of this, and this is what we consider cyber resiliency. So you have to ask yourself, you may have a piece of this, you may have some immutability, but is it truly immutable? You may be able to do some sensitive data exfiltration, but maybe it's only 40% of your infrastructure because the product you're using is incredibly expensive, so we only do it for our mission critical data. How would we do a clean room recovery? And then do we know how far back in time with the tools we have we could go? And we can all do that with our Rubrik cyber resiliency. This is done through the data vault, 100% immutable. This is a little bit of a review, but our first product is immutable, physically isolated, built-in scanners, and it's scale out. We have a dual machine learning model that can scan for encryption. We do that on the first copy and alerts within 15 minutes of getting that copy. We also integrate, because we are doing that first copy and we're API driven, you can integrate that into your own management tools. We have a sensitive data discovery tool that is looking for that PII data on that first scan as well. It is a policy-based product that we have canned products, so you don't have to create your own, but we have the ability to extend those if you need to. So if you need to extend those, we can do that as well. We also move beyond just looking at what's encrypted and what data was possibly exfiltrated, but we can do an IOC scan. So we can live scan deep into your infrastructure and quarantine things that have been left behind to do malicious damage. So that ensures that not only is your data recoverable, but that you're not reinfected or you can't reintroduce threats in the future. Something like 60 or 70% of our customers that have had an attack that did not do mitigation in their past or did not have the ability to scan for threats within their infrastructure get hit again within 6 months. So having the ability to take indicators of compromise from your infrastructure vendors and put them into our tool and make sure that you know all of the possible attack points that they've left behind and quarantine those so they're not recovered through your backups very powerful. And so all of this is great, but we add on one more layer, which is the ability to do this through an automated workflow. So we've got that bunker. We can tell you what's been stolen. We can tell you where the recover points are. We can tell you what's been left behind. Now we can actually put all of that together. We can decide which VMs and which order to recover and provide an automated workflow for that. So we can provide runbook type recoveries with postscripts so that it's one button recoveries, so that your recoveries, once you've made all of these determinations on which VM to recover and what point in time we want to go to, that we can do that automated so that it happens in an orderly fashion. All of this on top of that central UI with the automated efficiencies is a pretty powerful tool for you to make sure those recoveries are successful in your infrastructure. I think I'm running a little ahead of time here, so hopefully we have a good time check. The last thing I'm going to cover beyond that is what we do as a company that is beyond just providing a great product, providing that vault, providing that recover capability. Part of every customer that we have, and we think this is important, is a ransomware response team. Most of the time, once you go through a ransomware, it's the first time. It can be incredibly daunting to deal with all of the impacts. You walk in, you've got this black screen with the Bitcoin address, or you get an email, your management tool. It's the middle of the night. It's probably a Friday night or a Saturday morning, and you need to get your ducks in a row. And sometimes it can be incredibly overwhelming. Part of the Rubrik product is access to the ransomware response team. It doesn't matter what level of the product you purchase. If it's just M365, if it's the on-prem, if it's the cloud native, you'll have access to this team. Immediately after making a call into our support line, you'll get access to this team, and they will jump on the call and start doing all of the best practice recommendations, essentially a consulting service for you to ensure that your backups are recoverable in the best way possible. You're going to have those immutable copies, but we want to get in there and make sure that they're not adding anything in the infrastructure that could effectively cause problems. So things like stopping current backups to make sure they're not introducing additional data into your thing. Part of that append-only file system allows us to sometimes go back in time even further than your policies identify. So lots of nice things that this team brings to the table. They are 24/7, 365, and they have been doing this for a good amount of time. So we've had hundreds of customers leverage this team in helping them recover. The added value of this is we get closer representation with our customers, but we learn from these events. So every time we have a ransomware response team engagement, they understand a little bit better about what's going on in the infrastructure, in the ecosystem. They know the tactics. They learn more about the tactics. That allows us to improve our tools. So we get better at that ransomware investigations. We get better at that sensitive data discover. We get better at that workflow migration where we allow that workflow because we're in the trenches with you doing the recoveries real time with our customers, which is an incredible value add for our customers, but for us as well. It allows us to understand the infrastructure and the ecosystem that the bad actors are using, and that's pretty important.
It sure is, Brandon. Thanks for that. And now it is time for our next poll question. Let us know what additional resources you'd like to see from Rubrik, which is always ready to talk to you. Looks like we had a lot of questions that we can't get to right now, but Rubrik is great about follow-up on these. So if you asked one, don't worry, because you will be hearing from them. But continue to vote while I talk about the handouts. We've got a link to the Rubrik website where you can go for more information. And thanks for voting in that poll, for continuing to vote in these polls. And I'm going to do the next prize drawing while this question stays up here for another minute. The winner of our next $300 Amazon gift card is Donald Smallwood from Indiana, who will be hearing from us soon. Congratulations to you, Donald. Folks, and then there was one. We are on to our final presentation of this MegaCast, and this one comes from Zerto. We'll be hearing from technical evangelist Chris Rogers, and at the end of his session, I will be joined by Anthony Dutra for some lively Q&A. So make sure that you ask questions throughout this presentation. We will get to those as soon as we are done. So, Chris, you are ready to go. Take it away.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're listening in the world. My name is Chris Rogers, and today we're going to be talking about continuous availability from edge to cloud. So let's get started. So whenever we're talking about availability and continuous availability, some of the big customer challenges that come up are cyber threats, disruptions, and cloud complexity. So as you can see on the screen, the cyber threat statistic we have is it takes on average 1 month to recover from ransomware attacks. In today's economy, in today's world, that is not an acceptable number. Only 52% of organizations can recover from severe data loss within 12 hours. Again, providing huge amounts of downtime for organizations, especially when we're so reliant on data. And cloud complexity. Over 90% of organizations have shifted their cloud strategy since COVID-19. So we're seeing a huge shift to and from the cloud as well. So it's understanding how we can best address these customer challenges, what I'm going to address in the next part of the presentation. So how do we reduce data loss and downtime? Traditionally, we've used daily backups because they've had production impact, so we can't do them more than once or twice a day. So if we look at the daily backups, our recovery point objective would be 24 hours. And on average, recovery time objective can be anywhere up to 8 hours. And this, included with all the other impacts we have, can have an impact of over $12 million depending on the size of the business. But that's an average downtime cost for one outage of around 24 hours of RPO and 8-hour RTO. And then if we look at other technologies such as storage replication, we can do that more frequently. So every 4 hours, for instance. So we can have a recovery point objective of 4 hours and recovery time objective of 4 hours. That impact lessens to $3 million. And now if we take Zerto as a prime example, we're using continuous data protection, which I'll cover in more detail in the coming slides. But our RPO is going to be around 10 seconds, and our recovery time objectives, RTO, is going to be around 10 minutes, reducing that impact down to less than $50,000. That's a huge impact and can really save organizations time and money. And what do I mean by continuous availability? Well, continuous availability from edge to cloud means solving for the most popular use cases where availability isn't available. So the 3 core pillars of where Zerto solves most of its problems are disaster recovery, ransomware resilience, and multi-cloud mobility. All of this is underpinned by a foundation of continuous data protection. And then wrapped around the outside of that is built upon orchestration, automation, and powerful analytics. And as you can see from the logos, we do have a truly cloud agnostic approach, whether it's a private or a hybrid cloud or a public cloud you're after. So let's dive into disaster recovery. How does Zerto do disaster recovery better than anybody else, and what use cases can it solve? So we're able to unlock the private, public, hybrid, and multi-cloud strategies for disaster recovery. So we do disaster recovery for private cloud, real-time hypervisor level replication, regardless of underlying hardware that includes compute, storage, and even the hypervisor itself. So migration to, from, and between the clouds, being able to migrate data to and from the clouds, which leads in to be able to do disaster recovery to and within the cloud as well. So being able to protect those cloud workloads that are up there, so you have Amazon EC2 instances or Azure IaaS virtual machines. We also have disaster recovery as a service, expert-led protection with 350 plus managed service providers worldwide who offer their clients ultimate protection based on the Zerto foundations. And then if you're looking for SaaS data protection as well, we have the ability to protect and recover some of the most popular SaaS applications on the planet. So I've spoken about continuous data protection briefly in previous slides. So I want people to understand what best-in-class continuous data protection using near-synchronous replication looks like and what are the benefits. Some of the benefits are laid out on the screen. I will run through some of these. So the idea of CDP, or continuous data protection, is that we have no impact to virtual machines. So whilst we're snapshotting or doing storage-based replication, sometimes it can slow down production, have a stun the virtual machines, or snapshot consolidation, etc. With CDP, your virtual machines will not know they're being replicated. Because it is continuous, the whole ideology of it is there is no scheduling, there's no snapshots, and there's no agents to install on any virtual machines. Inside of Zerto, we're replicating at the time of every data change. So we're doing real-time replication of your data, hence why you see those really low RPOs of between 5 and 10 seconds. And whilst we are replicating that data, Zerto has a unique ability to do inline, real-time encryption detection and alerting. So protecting your most valuable workloads and alerting when anomalous activity happens for something like ransomware. And again, all of this on the hardware and storage and even hypervisor of your choice, but also the ability to protect not just on premises, to the cloud, in the cloud, and all of that simultaneously as well. So inside of the continuous data protection, we have to store the data somewhere. In Zerto, we store the data in our unique journal. This gives you granular point-in-time recovery. So the ability to recover within not just minutes, but within seconds of something happening. So at the bottom here, you can see a real simplified version. It's detection, so detecting when something is possibly going wrong in the environment, such as ransomware. Being able to respond, so minimizing data loss and downtime with those low RPOs and low and fast RTOs. And then being able to recover to a clean state just seconds before an attack or any other disruption, such as a power outage or other natural disaster, for instance. And the graphical view here really highlights that. If we were going back using backups once a day, we're going to have 24 hours worth of data loss. If we're using those incremental snapshots or storage replication, we're going to be going back 4 hours. But in this instance, we're going to be going back 5 seconds to just before the disaster hit, rewinding and resuming operations as if nothing really happened. That's the power of unique CDP with journaling. And then how we protect data at Zerto is slightly different also. We have the ability to group virtual machines together and provide a consistent recovery experience across all of those virtual machines. So in this instance on the screen you can see here, we have a typical 4-tier application with an app server, a DB server, web server, and a file server. All of those components make up a full application. And without each of one of those components, the application doesn't run properly. So why, when we're doing traditional data protection, we back those up individually. And then when we come to recovery, we have an inconsistent recovery. We have a database server that's potentially hours out of date from its app server, which is only going to cause delay and cause further complications. So at Zerto, put all of these all of these virtual machines that make up the application into one logical group, which we call virtual protection groups. They have write order fidelity across all of those virtual machines. And then we have a consistent restore across all of those virtual machines from exactly the same point in time, no matter where they live. They can be across hosts, different storage, etc. And we're going to have all of those virtual machines recovered to the exact same second in a consistent manner, saving you time and potentially money as well by having a consistent recovery experience without wasting time trying to redo logs with database servers, etc. And then no disaster recovery plan is complete without testing. And the idea of doing DR testing is pretty horrible to most IT administrators out there. It usually involves out of hours work, weekends, public holidays, when there's going to be the least disruption. With Zerto, we have the ability to do full non-disruptive testing anytime during the week. We want IT operations to operate during normal business hours. So we have no impact to production with fully orchestrated and automated failover tests. And these two things enable us to do frequent and comprehensive testing, and again, inside of business hours. And those orchestration automated tests allow for runbooks to be done, less IT staff involved, which means we can do more of them or refocus IT staff on more strategic initiatives. And if we look at the case study at the top of the screen here, so before Zerto, they had 3.5 days worth of testing involved. And after Zerto, that has been reduced to less than 2 hours. And a really cool stat on the right-hand side of the screen. So on average, Zerto customers perform 18,000 or more tests per month with an average recovery time objective of around 3 minutes and 20 seconds. That's pretty impressive across the whole estate of Zerto customers. And this feeds into only Zerto can achieve the type of experience you're seeing on your screen today. So we are battle-tested CDPs since 2011. We've been on the market a lot longer than everyone else doing continuous data protection. We know what we're doing, and it's been proven reliability at scale across multiple thousands of customers. And we are the gold standard in performance and reliability. If you take, for instance, the customers across the bottom here, multiple thousands worth of virtual machines, all with a sub 10-second recovery point objective across their whole hybrid cloud estate. That's pretty impressive if you ask me. So now let's dive into cyber recovery and ransomware resilience, a topic that no matter how hard I try in every single meeting I'm having with customers, it always comes up. So here at Zerto, we have 3 pillars of ransomware resilience. The first one being replicate and detect, the second one being isolate and lock, and the third one being test and recover. And following those 3 initiatives, or those 3 pillars, gives us continued protection for any app, any cloud, and any threat. And we're going to go through these pillars in a little bit more detail now. So the first one is replicate and detect. Detecting at the point of encryption, not after something's been backed up. And as we go back to our earlier kind of talk about daily backups, if we're doing them once every 24 hours, we give ransomware a huge time gap before the last backup is completed and the next one is taken to spread everywhere throughout the network. If we don't catch that almost immediately, it's only going to impact us more. So inside of Zerto, as I mentioned earlier, we have real-time detection, and that alerts on the first moment of impact. So the first time the ransomware triggers and starts encrypting your valuable data, Zerto is going to pick that up and tell you almost immediately, within seconds of something happening, we're going to tell you that anomalous activity is happening. We can help you identify the blast radius of that. So we can tell you which VM, which volume, which application is being impacted. We can then pass that information out into your SIEM and source systems, or whatever other systems you have in your security stack, to be able to do whatever you need to do with that information, whether that's pausing replication, alerting a red team, etc., allowing you to do whatever you want, fully extensible. Once we have that, we have the ability to tell you as soon as possible that something is going wrong in your environment. And all this is available with no additional infrastructure. So if you're a Zerto customer previous to this feature coming out and post the feature coming out, you would have to deploy no new infrastructure or virtual machines. And also available at no extra cost to our existing customers also. So the second piece here being isolate and lock. So introducing the Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault, giving you a fully isolated, air-gapped, immutable system based upon zero trust principles. So obviously your data is the most important piece. That's why we're putting it in the middle of this. And it, as I said, it's fully isolated, so away from production and any other systems you have. It is fully air-gapped. There is no persistent connection between production and the vault. The data is always immutable. So whenever you're passing data inside of the vault, it is always marked as immutable. That is not an option. You don't have to enable it. You don't have to configure it. It's always done. And this is based upon zero trust principles inside of our vault as well. And this is a purpose-built cyber recovery solution, and it is for when there is no other option for recovery. This isn't going to be for when you recover your day-to-day files, when people from accounts or wherever else, marketing, etc., have lost files or folders or individual VMs or applications. This is for large-scale cyber attack and the recovery of those after those attacks. And lastly, we move into test and recover. And if we look at the testing and recovery phase, this is where most other vaults start to fall down. Pretty much because they're based upon backup architecture and using backup technologies. So if we look at a leading backup-based cyber vault in the marketplace today, so this is an example based upon an actual customer protecting 300 VMs and 300 terabytes of data. So the last good copy would be roughly 2 days old. So once they've actually ingested the data into their backup software, it's moved across from the primary storage into backup-based appliances and across into a vaulted appliance. And once it's been scanned for malicious software and things like that, we're looking at a 2-day delay. And then there are time to restore that data. So 300 terabytes of data, we're looking at potentially over 3 weeks to restore that data. Because we are using backup appliances, we're using big, heavy spinning disks, which aren't designed to recover huge amounts of data quickly. They're there for backup use cases, which are normally smaller than a large-scale ransomware or cyber attack. So the total ransomware impact would be between 3 and 5 weeks for that customer, which is unacceptable in today's market. And as I said before, they are using backup-based systems rather than journal-based recovery. So if we looked at the Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault and the differences, so our last good copy would be roughly 4 hours or less. So 4 hours would be the maximum that we're going to be able to go to for the last good copy. We're taking that time to restore down to around 2 hours because we are using production grade storage and compute on an all flash basis as well. So we're giving you that super quick time to recovery because the storage and compute running there is production grade, not based upon backup appliances. So that total ransomware impact is going to be around 6 hours or less, which equals a more than 99% reduction based upon the numbers we've come up with. And it uses journal-based recovery. And as you can see on my screen here, the only solution in the marketplace for cyber recovery that uses journal-based recovery. And I want to run you through a customer that we have. So they had 2 ransomware attacks, unfortunately, and that's not uncommon. In most environments, you will see a continuation of ransomware attacks. It may just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or more. You get the idea. It's not uncommon to be attacked more than once. So before Zerto, they were implementing backups. They actually had an attack and they lost 12 hours worth of data, and it took them around 2 weeks to recover, which based upon the previous stat that we've discussed today, is pretty typical of a backup-based strategy. Pretty hefty amounts of data loss and even longer to recover that data. So after they first got attacked, they started looking for a better solution in the marketplace. So they implemented and purchased Zerto. So now they're using continuous data protection as we've discussed. So they have 10 seconds worth of data loss on their next attack and only a recovery time of 10 minutes. So there's a massive difference between losing 12 hours worth of data and 10 seconds worth of data, and even more, 2 weeks of recovery time, which for most people is a really nice vacation away, or recovery time of 10 minutes, which unfortunately is probably not even a coffee break for most people. So those are the massive differences we can use by using journal-based recovery in a cyber instance or a cyber recovery use case. And now I want to talk to you about multi-cloud mobility and agility. So we remember this slide from before where we're looking at all the different use cases we can use Zerto for. And we're going to focus on the migration to, from and between clouds, but also the DR to and within clouds as well. That gives us a really big opportunity to be able to protect your data no matter where it lives. So inside of the public cloud, so even if you're running everything in public cloud, we are seeing a huge kind of spin on public cloud and a turn, and people are repatriating data and being purposely hybrid in their approaches to infrastructure and IT. So here you have Zerto for VMware, so CDP for to and from public cloud, and we also include the VMware on public cloud vendors in there as well. So things like the Azure VMware solution, Google Cloud VMware Engine, etc. So being able to protect workloads to and from those cloud environments. And then Zerto for Azure, scalable DR across regions with multi-disk consistency, using the APIs that we at Zerto co-developed with Microsoft for data protection. And then Zerto in cloud for AWS, orchestrated agentless DR for DR at scale across regions and zones. And you can combine all 3 of these into a single solution, a single product that enables you to protect your workloads no matter where they are. So ensuring no application goes unprotected, no matter where the source or destination is. That's a really huge benefit because you can use a single tool, single platform, if you will, to be able to understand and look at your whole data protection portfolio across your hybrid cloud estate. And now when we look at it from a VMware perspective, we support vCenter, but also Cloud Director as well, which enables our managed service providers to allow DR as a service to their customers as well. And we also allow immutability via S3 compatible storage, and also, as we've discussed, using the Cyber Resilience Vault. And it's simple SaaS-based backup and DR, but we can also integrate that into the HP GreenLake cloud as well. So that single edge-to-cloud platform to store, manage, and protect your data. And inside of there, you can use things like backup, HP GreenLake for backup and recovery, and HP GreenLake for disaster recovery also. So with Zerto and HP and the whole GreenLake ecosystem, we're able to provide distributed protection from edge to cloud. So no matter what you're trying to protect, where you're trying to protect it to and from, Zerto and HP have a solution for you. So as we've mentioned, all of the things on all of the logos on this slide, you can protect using Zerto and HP. So if you would like to experience more or learn a bit more about what we've discussed today, I know this has been quite a broad range of topics and hopefully piqued your interest in a few things. If you'd like to see a live tailored demo, we can absolutely do that for you. So info@zerto.com. If you'd like to test drive Zerto in a self-contained lab environment, we have Zerto hands-on labs. So feel free to sign up zerto.com/labs. If you'd like to do it in your own environment, you can have a 14-day trial, zerto.com/free trial. And if you think that everything that I've spoken about today has been too good for you, or it's too good to be true, please look at our reviews on Gartner Peer Insights, Trust Radios, etc., because it really is valuable to hear from your peers, and you'll see that the things that I've been saying today are backed up by the market and your peers in IT. So on that note, I'd like to thank you very much. My name has been Chris Rogers, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Well, I can't speak for everyone, Chris, but I sure did enjoy it. A very much great overview on what Zerto is doing. And now we are going to get to some questions while I throw up the poll question. So please let Zerto know what additional information you would like from them about their solution. And I am now joined by Zerto's Anthony Dutra. He is with me now. And let's dive in. Anthony, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Let's go.
Outstanding. Got some great questions coming in. It is time to hit those up. So first question today, is Zerto's encryption detection feature an extra charge?
Ooh, no, it is not. That's a great question. A lot of technologies out there, especially when they're doing a lot of different things for defense in depth, do tend to charge extra. Our encryption detection is part of the Zerto licensing. No extra charge whatsoever. Just make sure you're running the latest and greatest Zerto to take advantage of it.
Nice to hear that. We have a related question from Chad, who wants to know what encryption protocols does Zerto use to secure data during replication and when it's at rest in target environments?
Ooh, yes, there's a long one there that I did get around to answering, but there's a lot to that. Basically, Zerto does encryption to the data that is talking to it. So basically anything that Zerto is interacting with within your VMware environment, that itself is secure in how it's interacting with those components. And then when the replication is done itself, it is done. Oh my God, it's like a TLS. It's a very specific data in transit encryption that we take care of ourselves. And it doesn't matter if the secondary site or wherever you're replicating to is also using data at rest encryption. Since we operate at the hypervisor, you know that it's safe throughout, and we are interoperable with that as well.
Okay, excellent. Glad to hear. Okay, so next question for you, Anthony. Is Zerto in cloud for AWS available in the marketplace?
Oh, great question, because I did see Chris bring up a lot about Zerto and our cloud flexibility. Yes, we did last year drop Zerto in cloud for AWS, and it is available for download in the marketplace to use today to do that same awesome level of replication that you saw Chris go through, but within AWS itself. So go download it today.
Absolutely. On that same thought here, I want to remind everyone about the handouts. We've got a data sheet from Zerto on cyber resilience that you really don't want to miss. So in the time we have left, go to that handouts section and get that now. Okay, got time for a couple more questions here, Anthony, before we let you go. We actually had HPE on earlier talking about GreenLake. So someone wants to know, is Zerto also on HPE GreenLake?
Oh, yes, it is. If you guys go check out HPE GreenLake for disaster recovery, that basically provides you a full cloud console to manage Zerto, creating protection groups, doing much of the great stuff that you do with, if you are familiar with Zerto on-premise today, but through that single control, cloud control praying through HPE GreenLake console. So we are very excited to be part of the HPE family, and there's the one place to go check it out.
A nice marriage there between Zerto and HPE. I have to agree with you. Okay, and while we've got the poll question up, I want to remind everyone we've got another minute to vote in that poll, and I want to ask you related to that today, Anthony. If someone wants to take the next step now with Zerto, what should they do as soon as this event is over? What would you recommend they do next?
What they have to do is type in Zerto Hands-On Labs and go sign up for those. Those are our free hands-on labs where we provide you an environment to play with Zerto for yourself, get your hands dirty, see what our ransomware stuff, our encryption detection looks like, see what Zerto and Cloud for AWS looks like, all that fun stuff. We have it available for you to play with for free. So go please check that out.
I love free test drives, especially comprehensive ones like that. Well, Anthony, this has been so much fun to have you on. Thank you for your insights in the Q&A, and can't wait to see what is coming up next from Zerto. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
All right. Excellent stuff, everyone. And now we are up to our final prize drawings of the event today. And they are for the $300 Amazon card and the last Kindle Scribe of the event. The winner of the Amazon gift card is Eric Yancey from Arkansas. And the last Kindle Scribe goes to not me, but to Julie Sella from Pennsylvania. Way to go, folks. We'll be in touch to get you your prizes, and I will try not to hold it against you, Julie, that you got that Kindle Scribe instead of me. And I'm going to move on here to the next thing now. We are done with our poll questions for the day. I hope you enjoyed this MegaCast today. That's it for our sessions. And if you did enjoy it, know that we can do something like this for your company too. We'd love to hear from you to help you determine which of our hundreds of events each year would be a good fit for you. We can also do custom webinars just for you. I did a whole bunch of them last year, and I'm looking forward to doing some more this year. If this is you and you just want more information to find out what can be done, contact us at connect@actualtechmedia.com and get in touch with us. Okay, so we just got finished with a great security session, great security show today, and I wanted to let you know we've got another amazing security event coming up next week. It's Tuesday, February 6th, and this one is all about managed security services providers. That's a big deal these days. Having a security partner can be great if you do it right. So check out this event February 6th at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, and whatever that is in Australia time. And with that, everyone, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank all of our presenters today for putting together these amazing presentations, demos, Q&A, insights, so much goodness there. And I want to thank all of our participants for making this event possible, a list that includes, from the top, TierPoint, Axis, KnowBe4, HPE, Veeam, Rubrik, and Zerto. And finally, last but never ever least, I want to thank all of you attendees for being here with me on this MegaCast today. and for all of your great questions, for spending part of your day with us. It was a pleasure, as it always is, to be with you. And I hope you feel the same. That concludes today's event, everyone. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day.